Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of Reddit Podcast Stories, where today, my future mother-in-law thinks she's entitled to hugs from my toddler. I'm 28 female, and my oldest son is 3. My fiance, who's 32 male, his mom came over a few weeks ago and when leaving asked my 3-year-old for a hug. He initially said no and walked away, came back unprompted and hugged her. She said, "Oh, good, because I was going to be sad." With my fiance's, aunt's, and best friend's edits, I sent her this, summed up. We're teaching our 3-year-old that he's in control of his own boundaries regardless of how it makes someone feel. If he's trying to make someone upset on purpose, that's a different story. We don't want him to go against his boundaries to make someone feel better. I'm sure you just want to show he's important to you, but we'd appreciate it if you could show it in a different way. Future mother-in-law. OP, I'd appreciate you not sending me these kinds of messages, and we have these conversations in person. Thank you. Me. I don't really see a difference, to be honest. I would have said the same thing in person. I didn't see this topic as one that needs to be discussed too much. If you have a response, I'm obviously open to hearing it, but it won't change the fact that saying things that could make my kids feel guilty and responsible for others' feelings will not be accepted. Again, you can show that you care for the boys, but not in ways that make them feel bad. Future mother-in-law. Because having adult conversations via text, I believe is pretty cowardice. When you address me or any other adult via text, it's not really appropriate. So I will end this conversation with, if you can't talk things over with me instead of telling me what not to do, then that in itself is a problem. So I'm done. Me. Again, I would say the same words to you in person. Nothing cowardice about the method I choose to say these words. The reason I didn't think it made sense to do it in person is because I'm essentially asking you a favor, and it's your choice to acknowledge it or not. I wasn't looking for a debate about it, just asking that you please not make certain comments to my babies. I'm alright if she'd prefer me to discuss something like this in person, but why ignore my initial message? Seems like blame shifting and diverting to me. She then went to my fiance and texted him, "So by now I'm sure OP told you that she was messaging me. If you guys have something you need to say to me, just say it." They had a 30-minute phone call, and my fiance told me that she said, she's already distanced herself from coming over, and she'll distance herself more if she has to. And it's not something she was doing intentionally. I never said it was intentional, just bringing her attention to this and potential repercussions. I chose to message her because I'm horrible at having deep and stressful conversations in person. I have ADHD, so I can't process what I want to say and what the other person has said and formulate responses, etc. Also, this is a boundary, so not really up for discussion or debate. Either she chooses to stop or doesn't. Am I the jerk for asking this or how I brought it up? Not the jerk. Future mother-in-law sounds like an extreme narcissist, and I hope your fiance can man up and cut contact with her. If he's the type of mama's boy we usually read about, he might try to side with her instead of you. Is that really the type of man you'd want to be married to? Not the jerk. There was no need for an in-person conversation. If being told not to use certain language that teaches kids they're responsible for your feelings sends you into a tizzy, maybe you need therapy. Addressing an issue immediately is important, not waiting until later, and really, it was a pretty minor ask. Not the jerk. She only has a problem with you texting because then she can't turn around and say she didn't know or you didn't tell her when she does it again. It wasn't a big deal. You were just sending her an FYI, in the future, please don't do this type message. It didn't need to be a full sit-down conversation. She's very defensive. Not the jerk. If she does it again, just say to your kid in front of her, just because she's going to be sad doesn't mean you have to hug her. You're not doing anything wrong. Then she can enjoy that awkwardness of the face-to-face interaction she so desperately wanted. Not the jerk. What is it with boomers and stomping all over boundaries? If I were you, she wouldn't be anywhere near me or my family, which includes your fiance, until she apologizes to you. And how dare she say, we should talk about this in person and not through text. Many people suffer with extreme social anxiety. I'm one of them, and I always prefer to text. That way, I don't have to deal with the pressure of saying something to you in person. There's nothing wrong with texting instead of talking in person, especially when dealing with a bully like future mother-in-law. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or mother-in-law? Please let us know. Every time I'm starting to regain my faith in humanity, Reddit has to come along and just Reddit all over it. Am I the jerk for using money we earmarked for our 6-month-old's college fund to buy back the exact car I owned as a teenager? So, I realize that on paper I'm totally the jerk, But when you dig deeper into my motivations, I'm hoping it's more of a gray area than anything else, and maybe even I did the right thing. When I was a teenager, my dad bought me a classic 1972 Ford Bronco. It was my true passion, and I don't recall a memory from high school that somehow doesn't involve that truck. Plus, my dad and I would spend hours and hours working on it together. And when we went through that father-son rough patch when I was a teenager, it was always that Bronco that brought us back together. I made a huge mistake and sold the truck when I turned 19, and my dad passed of a heart attack 2 months later. So while not logical, I've always felt a karmic connection between the two events. We had a baby in early February. She's our first and the light of my life. My wife is doing well, but she's back at work, and she realized that she hates all the daycares we've tried and really wants to be a stay-at-home mom, and she's still very hormonal from delivery, lack of sleep, and naturally feeding, so she's having a rough time and she's angry a lot. I guess I need to say this. 2 weeks ago, I was driving through our town's warehouse district and saw a Bronco that was pretty beat up but resembled mine. I stopped just for nostalgia's sake, and the owner came out and let me take a look inside. My dad and I had glued a wheat penny under the dash as sort of security measure, so I just sort of checked, and I'll be darned if it wasn't my Bronco. I asked him if he'd ever consider selling it. He said actually someone was on I-25 as we spoke from Colorado to buy it for $21,000. I freaked out and asked him if I could buy it right then and there for $23,000. He said if I could come up with the cash, then yes. I had been procrastinating setting up a 529, so I had $12,000 in savings that my wife's parents had given us. Uh-oh. I maxed out my credit card to Venmo, and my mom brought down a check for $4,000, and I drove away in my old car. It was like a dream come true, like a literal dream come true. It needs a lot of work that I can't afford right now, but it's mine, like in my driveway mine. Again, I can't even describe what this joy is. My wife and her parents are furious with me. They feel I was deceptive, that a real man would have sacrificed anything and everything so my wife could go stay at home with his kids, and that we should have set aside that money they gave us for the college fund. My point is, my daughter is only 6 months old. We have 18 years to set up a college fund for her. But this Bronco means everything to me, and if I wouldn't have acted, it would have been gone forever. Now it can be that same connection between me and my kids. To me, it's the literal meaning of happiness. Like I said, on paper, I'm a jerk. But in real life, it's a gray area. How do you guys see it? Edit. I had no idea this would go so one way. I guess I messed up. I talked with my mom, and she's basically going to buy the Bronco from me in order to refill the college fund and pay off the credit card. The $4,000 will be a gift, and she's going to give me whatever I need to restore it. She's also been awesome to me, and she'd rather the money be spent now than wait for me and my sister's inheritance. Sorry to get everyone so mad at me. I was thinking with my emotions and acted badly. Edit 2. All the "mommy bailed you out" comments, are they really necessary? I found a solution, and it's coming from me and my sister's inheritance, so it's not like I'm not paying for it on my own eventually. Edit. I couldn't figure out why I was getting so many private messages, but I guessed it must be locked now. I didn't tell my wife that my mom bailed me out, and I lied and said that I found a buyer for the Bronco. I'll figure out how to cross that bridge when I get there, but my wife was so relieved that I came to my senses. I don't want to disappoint her. It's going to take all my lying skills to pull this one off over the next few years. This was probably one of the most infuriating "Am I the Jerk" posts in history. My coworkers and I had a field day talking about what a jerk he was. People in the comments rightfully tore him to shreds, and in the end, he still had no clue why people were upset with him. It wasn't just that he was stealing from his kid's college fund with an IOU, it's that other people contributed to it as well, not just OP. Should they all be able to use the fund as a piggy bank? He literally didn't even contribute to it though. He stole the $12,000 that his in-laws had sent them for their kid's college fund. Then he maxed out a credit card and asked mommy to drive over with a check for $4,000. He had absolutely no business even considering this as an option. None of the money he spent on this truck was his. It's absolutely wild. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk for spending that money on the truck or not? Please let us know. The best part is the guy who sold it to him was lying. Nobody was on their way to buy it, and the truck's actual value was but a small fraction of what he paid for it. Wait, really? No, I made that last part up. Tell me to work when I'm not on the clock? How about I organize a staff uprising instead? I used to work in a trade shop run by a great boss and everyone got along great, except for one of the department heads, let's call them B. For reasons unrelated to the story, the boss decided to sell the shop to B, and in the wake, the majority of the staff quits within months, leaving us understaffed. I naively decided to stick it out and assumed that B would hire people to fill the empty positions. They didn't. We go from a 15-person trade shop down to a 5-person within a year, and that includes the 6 people who turned over. One of the many issues that developed, and there were many, was B's inability to schedule or think through actions to the end and plan ahead. While I worked there, the 2 years with boss, I often came in 10 to 15 minutes early due to the nature of my commute. I'd come in, unload my stuff, make some coffee, small talk with my coworkers, just hang out with my boss, but we never really started work until everyone's scheduled start time. When B took over, the moment you stepped into the shop, B immediately started to bark orders at you, regardless if you were in the building 15 to 20 minutes early. Mostly it's because B was in a rush to get something done. They just remembered. When I, the now most senior person left at the shop from the old regime, would point out we technically weren't on the clock yet for another 15 to 20 minutes and I want to make coffee, B would just snap at you, telling you to do it now because so-and-so is coming right at opening. So I started to wait in my car, bring in my coffee from home, and would only walk in the door at the last minute. I was technically never late to work and was ready to work the moment I stepped through the door. I don't know if B caught on, but the rest of my staff did and followed suit, since I told them to. For the remaining months I lasted there, all my coworkers would still often show up early to work, but all wait in their vehicles. At some point, one of them had a minivan and we all partied in there and go in as a group. Anytime a new person joined, because someone walked off, we would also warn them of what would happen. It's been several years since I worked there. I do not know any of the current staff besides B. I happened to be doing an on-site install nearby at the time that the shop would open in the morning, and I looked over into the parking lot in front of the shop. Like clockwork, a minute before the shop was scheduled to open, about 6 people got out of their vehicles and walked in. I may not work there, but it's nice to see my resistance still exists. Am I the jerk for letting my daughter wear a costume like all the other kids? I, 34 female, have 2 kids who are 8 and 4. My daughter's name is Aurora. My husband, 36 male, and I chose that name because it was slightly similar to my late father-in-law's and worked well with our last names. It had nothing to do with the princess from Sleeping Beauty. In spite of that, we've had fun with that movie in the past, and ever since my daughter realized that she shared names with a Disney character, Princess Aurora has always been her favorite. Our family went to Disney World in July, and while there, we bought my daughter a Princess Aurora costume. She adores it and wears it whenever she has the chance to. 2 weeks ago, one of Aurora's friends from school threw a princess-themed birthday party. She encouraged her friends to wear costumes. My daughter wanted to go as her favorite character, which didn't surprise me at all. When we got to the party, the birthday girl came to greet my daughter, and she was also dressed as Princess Aurora. I didn't know what her costume was going to be prior to the party. I got worried for a second, but the birthday girl was actually really excited. She said that they looked like twins. It was adorable. They ran off to play, and I forgot about the costumes for a while. About 30 minutes into the party, I was at a table with some of the other moms when the birthday girl's mother came up to me. She asked if I had brought any spare clothes for Aurora. I said yes, I always do just in case. She then asked me to have her swap out of the costume and back into normal clothes. The mother explained that she had hired a photographer to walk around taking pictures of everyone, and was also planning on getting a group photo near the end of the party. She didn't want anyone wearing the same costume as her daughter in the pictures. She also thought her daughter might get jealous since my kid gets to share her name with their favorite princess. Now, if the birthday girl was the one who had a problem, I might have considered it. But no, she was genuinely excited they were dressed the same. It also didn't feel fair to force my daughter to be the only one without a costume at the party. I said no and explained my reasoning to the girl's mom. She insisted for a few minutes, but I held my ground. Some of the other moms started to back me up, and she eventually got up and left. When I went to pick up my kids earlier this week, I ran into her friend's mom. She accused me of ruining her daughter's party by allowing Aurora to wear the same costume as her. She told me she didn't think she'll ever be able to look at the pictures without being disgusted by my behavior. I thought she was exaggerating, but I'm starting to doubt myself. Our conflict has found its way to the mom's group chat that we're both in, and opinions over there are divided. Some think having 2 girls wear the same costume is no big deal. Others think I should have done what she asked me to. Am I the jerk? Oh, you have got to be kidding. You are really not the jerk here. That mom, what a piece of work. Jealous that a 4-year-old is going to outshine her precious? Gross. Terrible behavior on her part. She should be ashamed. I think it's adorable the birthday girl was so excited that another Aurora showed up. Good job standing your ground. Nobody puts baby in the corner. OP. I thought it was adorable too. I remember my classmates would get mad at me for wearing the same costume as them on Halloween when I was a kid. I heard more, "We can't both be Bill," than I like to remember. I'm glad my daughter didn't go through that. If she was so insistent that no one else would be dressed up as Aurora, why wouldn't she specify that when she sent out invites? Not the jerk. It sounds to me like another example of a mom wanting her little angel to be the only special one. I mean, I get that it's the kid's birthday party, but it was a princess party. Your daughter dressed up as a princess. If there was nothing indicated not to dress as that specific princess, then you did nothing wrong. This is on that mother and her own expectations. Am I the jerk for refusing to sleep on the couch? I, 32 male, and my wife, 31 female, got into a heated argument after her friend accused me of hitting on her. The other day, on my way from work to home, I came across a friend of my wife, and she looked like she was carrying heavy stuff, so I asked if she wanted a ride home. At first, she declined, but as I was leaving, she changed her mind and got into the car. We had a nice chat whilst driving, and all was well. I even told my wife about it when I got home. Yesterday, I was confronted by my wife because I allegedly had been hitting on her friend. I obviously denied it, and I told her the version of events, but apparently I was persistent with said friend when offering her the ride. I only asked twice, and the second time was asking if she was sure. My wife insisted that her friend isn't the type to just lie about something like this. Naturally, I asked why she trusted her friend more than me, and then she told me about how her sister's husband cheated with a friend. I was angry at how I was being compared to someone else based on a mere accusation, and we ended up arguing. Then we were just about to go to sleep, and she told me to sleep on the couch because she didn't feel comfortable with me. I argued that I wasn't going to be punished for something I didn't do, and after quite a back and forth, I eventually let her have the room and I slept in the other one instead. I woke up in the morning to yet another confrontation about why I didn't sleep on the couch. I was obviously baffled and asked why I would sleep on the couch when there's an entire other room. According to her, if one spouse tells the other that they need to sleep on the couch, then they should do as asked to show that they're sorry. I pointed out this was ridiculous, especially when you add the fact that I didn't even do anything. Things are now tense, all because I gave someone a lift. Am I the jerk? Update. Well, not too long after the arguments, we eventually confronted said friend, only for another argument to break out, this time between my wife and her friend, and I got more than I bargained for. Basically, the friend denied ever saying I was hitting on her and said my wife took it out of context or misheard her. My wife argued back saying the opposite, that friend said I was making moves on her and flirting. According to friend, her words were along the lines of, "Your husband was very nice to me, and had it been any other person, I would think that they were flirting." Honestly, there was a lot of back and forth about what was actually said, but in the end, it was established that I had in fact not flirted with her friend. However, because of this argument, things were heated and things were said. What got me is when her friend revealed to me that my wife was very insecure and had been keeping tabs on me, checking my phone every now and then without my knowledge, and quote, searching my car and laundry for any feminine products or scents that didn't belong to her every so often. Apparently, she's been confiding all this to her friends, and at some point even considered having one of her friends flirt with me to see what I would do. Needless to say, I'm speechless and very disappointed. It's only now that I realize there wasn't any trust ever in this marriage, and I'm only going to continue suffering because her sister's failed marriage. She's tried apologizing and denying, to the point where I'm confused what she's apologizing for and what she's denying. I was tempted to give her the same treatment she gave me based on an accusation, but to be honest, I really don't have the energy. As for now, I've asked for some space to contemplate this entire marriage. Thanks for the support, it means a lot. Your wife clearly has major insecurity problems, and what she is doing is terrible. OP is wanting to have space, but as much as it is predictable, I don't see this marriage continuing anymore, especially with what's happened. OP may forgive, but it's really difficult to forgive someone that would pull something like this. Am I the jerk for hosting my own Thanksgiving after my daughter-in-law didn't invite me to hers? My daughter-in-law does not like me. My son got her pregnant in college, and I told him to get a paternity test since he was not exclusive with her, and she wasn't either. He told me she was seeing other people. He did, and he is the father. The first time I met her, she told me it was not a pleasure to meet in person who she thinks is a jerk. I never called her names. I tried to explain, but I got cut off by my son. Me and him had a conversation and he told me to stop it. Shotgun wedding, and 1 kid later, our relationship is strained. I see her at family events, but that's really it. I've been blown off so many times for inviting them out that I don't anymore. I've accepted that I won't be a strong presence in their lives or my grandkid. Now the family rotates who does holidays. It's her turn to host Thanksgiving. I gave a text asking what time I should be over and if they want me to bring anything. She told me I wasn't invited, but my husband is. I talked it over with him and we decided to host our own. I informed the other kids what happened and I'll have dinner at my place if they want to go. Well, none of the other kids are going now, and I'm getting texts from her and my son that I'm acting like a jerk and to cancel my Thanksgiving. Mini update. I sent a text with screenshots about not being invited to my son. According to him, he didn't know I wasn't invited and thought I was hosting to upset his wife. He sent texts that confirm that. I've called daughter-in-law to ask about how he presented the paternity test and if they were exclusive at the time. No pickup, so I will ask over text and give my side of the story. I'll inform when she responds. I got thrown under the bus, and they were on a break when she got pregnant. Apparently, they dated for like 2 months, had a break, became hookup partners again, got back together, then she found out she was pregnant. He presented it as me forcing him to have the test. So, they're going to deal with that now. Not the jerk. Hey, you may have been a jerk to your daughter-in-law. Jury is out on that one, and it's not why we're here. But when it comes to Thanksgiving, you weren't invited, so what did she expect you to do? Not the jerk. And it doesn't matter, but I'm just curious. Would you have told them to get a paternity test if they were exclusive with each other? She sounds demonic. OP. No, it wouldn't have made sense to do so. Info. Why are you blaming this entirely on your daughter-in-law and not your son? Not the jerk. There are unspoken rules when hosting an event on behalf of the whole family. Unlike a regular event where you are the host and in sole control, a rotating family host is actually more of a caretaker. There's an unspoken rule that if it's your turn to host the family, that you actually host the family. She chose not to host the family, but only host part of it. In that context, your response is correct. Friends from out of town want to stay at my home and have me stay somewhere else while they're here. I'm 30 female. My boyfriend, who's 35, has 2 friends who live in another state. We'll call them Jack and Liz. They want to come visit us in our state with their 4 kids, ages ranging from 5 to 10. I live in the downtown area of our city, while my boyfriend lives about 1 hour away in the suburbs. My house is close to where I go to school full-time, about a 5-minute walk, and also close to where I work, 10-minute walk to my first job, 10-minute drive to my second job. I live with my 3 dogs, and because of my busy schedule, I have a dog walker come every day to feed them and care for them. When Jack and Liz come to visit with their kids, they're asking to stay at my house. Here's the thing though. They want me to leave my house so their family can stay there with complete privacy. I think it's also worth noting that I've never met or spoken to Jack or Liz before. They're my boyfriend's friends and not mine. Also, they're originally from our city, so they have their parents and family members who still live here. They seem pretty wealthy because mostly they tell my boyfriend that they are. Liz is a stay-at-home mom and has never worked before because Jack has had multiple inheritances from deceased family members, and he brags about his high-paying job. They also own about 10 rental properties that they collect passive income from. Believe they bought these houses with their inheritance. Before meeting Jack, Liz also did not work because her family is wealthy and supported her. The thing is, my commute to work and school, I have one or both 7 days a week, is over an hour each way from my boyfriend's house in the suburbs. I already have such long days that changing my commute to be over 2 hours a day, even for a week, is giving me anxiety with all the stuff I have going on between work and school. Also, I don't have anyone to walk my dogs at my boyfriend's house, and even if I were to hire a dog walker, he doesn't want a stranger having access to his house. Finally, it would just be really uncomfortable to leave my home, and I'm also nervous about having the kids running around my house when I'm not there and my home is not child-proofed. So, am I the jerk? My boyfriend seems disappointed in me because I'm not opening my home to his friends, and I'm already making a bad impression on them. He also thinks that I'm doing this because I'm deciding to not like them based on what I know about them, just from what I've heard from him. Stuff like they're always asking to use my streaming logins but keep logging me out. When their dogs get old, they leave them at shelters so they can make room for new puppies. I don't think that this kind of stuff bothers me, but I think that even if it were my own friends making this housing request of me, I would tell them to get a hotel or stay at their parents' house. Edit. My boyfriend lost both his parents young, when he was 16 and 22, and he doesn't have siblings or much extended family. He considers his friends from high school as his family. I'm trying to be sensitive to his situation because essentially he thinks that I should be more accommodating to his friends since they are his family. Edit 2. Regarding their past actions with the family pets, I find it absolutely abhorrent. When I brought it up, I've been told that I am out of line because I don't have family or kids. My boyfriend thinks any criticism of their actions towards pets is a criticism of them as parents, which since I don't have kids, I shouldn't be allowed to voice opinions on stuff I don't know about. My boyfriend thinks they may have gotten rid of their dogs because of postpartum depression since they were both within 1 year of a baby being born. However, I still feel like this was a horrible thing that they did. Are they for real? I can't believe the audacity of anyone to ask you to do that, much less people you've never met before. Not the jerk. Tell them Airbnb offers full property rentals to suit their privacy needs. Not the jerk. Why can't they just go to your boyfriend's house and your boyfriend can stay at your place? It would make more sense that way. Asking you to exit your home to give privacy to people in your house sounds very entitled. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you give up your home for a week so they can stay there or not? Please let us know.
No, and I'd dump that boyfriend for even suggesting such a stupid thing. Why do people stay in relationships like this? I will never understand.
Am I the jerk for serving my sister-in-law dinner on a kid's plate? My husband and I have family dinners at our house every month or so with our family. I have some sets of fine china that I like to switch out between the seasons that I've inherited from my grandmother. When we have our get-togethers, I serve dinner on these plates. My mother-in-law compliments them every time. My sister-in-law, however, has made comments to me that they're not her style. I honestly didn't think twice about it until this past February when one of my plates was put in the sink broken. Chalked it up to an accident. In April, we had another dinner. This time, sister-in-law was carrying both her and her boyfriend's plates to the sink and accidentally dropped both. Again, no biggie at all. In May, she broke 2 more plates, and in June, she broke a plate and a cup. At this point, I was starting to catch on. I brought up these concerns to my husband, and he brushed it off as accidents. I told my mom, and she said that she thought my sister-in-law was doing it on purpose and got me a camera to put in my dining room. In July, we had a dinner, and I had an opportunity arise. My mother-in-law, sister-in-law, and her boyfriend joined us for dinner. While our plates were still on the table, my mother-in-law asked how my plants were doing, and I said that I'd show her. I told my husband to follow us outside so he could show her the plant that he's growing, leaving sister-in-law alone with her boyfriend. When we came back inside 5 minutes later, her plate was broken. When they left, I pulled up the camera footage. I saw her stand up when we walked out and peek around the corner, and then throw her plate on the ground. I kept this video for myself. That brings me to this past weekend. We had our family dinner, and we were joined by my in-laws, sister-in-law, and her boyfriend, as well as my parents, siblings, and niece. I served everyone, saving evil sister-in-law for last. I brought her food out on a child's plate with a sippy cup, and I got those kids' silverware with the plastic handles. She looked at me confused and said,
I think you mixed my plate up with your niece.
And I said, no, my niece is responsible enough to eat on a grown-up's plate. If you're going to act like a kid in my house, I'm going to treat you like a kid in my house. She tried to play coy, but I had my iPad ready and I played the video to everyone at the table. She started crying, swiped the kid's plate off the table, and stormed out. My in-laws both apologized and offered to pay for replacement plates, but I told them not to worry about it. Despite this, we still had a nice time. When everyone left, my husband told me that I was out of line and cruel, but I told him that this has been happening for months, and I've told him it was bothering me multiple times. It's Wednesday now. He's still being cold towards me, and I also got a text from my sister-in-law's boyfriend asking me if I would apologize to her because I really embarrassed her. I sent him the video again, and he left me on red. My husband just called me to ask if I was taunting her boyfriend because his sister called him crying that I was. So, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. You're amazing. You have nothing to apologize for. Your sister-in-law has a lot of things to apologize for, though. OP. I do feel bad that I embarrassed her. I spoke with their mom today, and she and my father-in-law have my back and say that I should demand her pay for the plates, and if she doesn't, then they would. But I'm not going to make anyone do that. I got them from my grandma, so they were special to me. Money can't help the sadness of not having them back. Not the jerk. Your husband and sister-in-law's boyfriend are, though. You inherited those from your grandmother. Sister-in-law has something seriously wrong with her mentally. Who breaks someone else's plates just because they aren't her style? Who cares about someone else's plate? It's a plate and not her house. She's behaving like a kid, She deserves to be treated like one and called out. Does she display any other type of aggressive behavior towards you? She sounds jealous and is throwing a tantrum like a toddler. OP. We were totally fine before this. We've never been like super close, but close enough to grab a coffee and get our nails done together. I've been married into the family now for 6 years and I love my in-laws. She was mildly passive-aggressive in May when she asked if her boyfriend could live with us while they were having a small issue, but it was my husband that said no. But this would have been during the plate and cup breaking. Should I confront my friend for trying to steal my girlfriend from me? For some context, I'm 26, male. My girlfriend, let's call her Lily, is 25, and we've been together for 3 years now. The friend in question, Mark, is 27. Mark and I have known each other for about 6 years, and he's been one of my closest friends. He met Lily about 2 years ago, and they've always had a friendly dynamic. They joke around a lot and share similar interests, but I've never thought much of it because I trusted Mark. In fact, I always believed that Mark was one of the few friends I could trust implicitly around my girlfriend. When I travel for work, which is often, Mark started hanging out with Lily's group of friends. Initially, this was discussed with Lily, and it was a bit unusual for me, but I chalked it up to him trying to expand his social circle and looking for new friends. After all, he had a tough breakup a while ago and has been trying to surround himself with positive people. Plus, Lily's friends adore our relationship and have always supported us. I thought, what's the harm? Fast forward a few months, Mark has become a regular member of their group. Birthday parties, movie nights, Sunday brunches, he's there for all of it. Lily's friends, and Lily herself, have come to love Mark. He's charismatic, funny, and everyone enjoys his company. However, I started to notice that he was particularly close to Lily and another of her friends, Jess, who's 24. They'd frequently post pictures on social media, always sitting together at group events, etc. Once again, I chalked it up to them just being close friends. Lily assured me that she felt no attraction towards him, and I don't have any reason to doubt that, but my issue was more whether Mark was being genuine. However, things took a turn earlier this week. Lily and I were out of town for a weekend getaway, and Mark attended an event with Lily's friend group. Jess confronted Mark because she felt he was being overly flirty with Lily, essentially fawning over her if neither of us were around, and his behavior was making her uncomfortable. To everyone's shock, Mark admitted he had feelings for both Lily and Jess. While he promised to set boundaries and maintain distance, he also took a dig at me. He said that I was a people pleaser and that I was too nice for my own good. He insinuated that even if I knew about his feelings, I wouldn't do anything because I like being the nice guy everyone loves. Honestly, that hurt more than him admitting feelings for Lily. I always saw myself as genuine, and to have someone I trusted imply I'm merely putting on an act has shaken my confidence. Since he had started hanging out with Lily's friend group, we had gotten a lot closer, and he seemed more interested in getting to know me better. Lily and I heard about this from Jess, so I can't be entirely sure on the context, which is eating me up. I came home the other day and hung out with him, and he said nothing. He's continuing business as normal, as though I don't know what happened. I'm torn now. I appreciate his honesty, but I feel betrayed. I want to maintain our friendship, but I also want to protect my relationship with Lily. She does not want to see him anymore and feels betrayed because we had both genuinely believed he'd be a safe friend who would want to hang out with her for her. To clarify, no moves were made, but Lily mentioned he had asked a lot about our relationship when I wasn't there at the social events, and I'm left wondering what he might have done if we were in a rough patch, but that's all speculation. I'm seeking advice on how to handle this situation. How do I approach Mark? How can we rebuild trust, if at all? And am I wrong for feeling like Mark's comment on my nature was a low blow? Update. After gathering my thoughts, I texted Mark to address the situation. He played it down massively, saying he didn't remember the conversation and was certain it didn't involve Lily. He tried to spin the people-pleasing comment, stating it was a reminder to respect my boundaries because I might not assert them. A weird explanation given how the entire situation didn't involve me and Lily. But here's where things got even more tangled. 3 separate friends, including Lily, approached me at different points with an unsettling claim. They said that Mark had told people that I viewed my relationship with Lily as a short-term thing. This was utterly baffling to me. Not only is it untrue, but it's also a complete violation of trust. Why would Mark spread such a damaging rumor about me, especially when he knows how committed I am to Lily? I also confronted Mark about another lie from last week that made me look bad in front of Lily's friends. He admitted to the falsehood, but tried to assure me he had corrected it the next day. After checking with the person involved, it became clear that Mark hadn't set the record straight as he had claimed. Through all of this, not a single apology came from Mark. He kept repeating that it was a misunderstanding. The fact he claims no memory of such recent events is deeply concerning. Reflecting on our friendship, a pattern is emerging. Mark has always been transitioning between friend groups for as long as I've known him. I never thought much of it, but now it seems he rarely retains any long-term friends from these groups. Could this be a repeating pattern of his behavior driving people away? It's heartbreaking. Mark has been a trusted friend for over 2 years. Understanding that he might have been manipulating situations and spreading false narratives about me is gut-wrenching. I've shared everything with Lily, and she's backing whatever decision I choose to make regarding Mark. It's hard to reconcile the friend I thought I knew with the person he's revealing himself to be. Any advice on navigating this would be appreciated. It's a tough road ahead. I'm not going to talk to Mark anymore, and I might let him know beforehand. Reading all of this again makes me feel comfortable in that choice, but in the moment, I'd wondered if he was right and if all of this wasn't a big deal. Update. Post-confrontation, I have not spoken to Mark. Our last conversation over text was me expressing my deep-seated concerns, primarily about catching him in a lie just a week prior. He claimed he had rectified that lie by apologizing to Jess the day after. When I pressed him on why he had apologized to Jess and not me, the person he had actually wronged, he evaded the question. Instead, he focused on producing proof of the apology, which he later said he must have given snap or in person, an evident lie. His response to everything was downright baffling. He even suggested that Jess and Lily had orchestrated the confrontation with an intent to drive a wedge between us. No remorse, no acknowledgement of my emotions. Ironically, he showed me a text he had sent to Jess the next morning indicating how enlightening their conversation had been, yet he claimed to have forgotten it. I chose text as the medium for confrontation because I feared he would deny everything outright if we met in person. I wasn't sure I could maintain my composure if he lied to my face. The whole interaction has left me reeling. I felt gaslit and minimized. I had secretly hoped that maybe, just maybe, he was mortified and didn't know how to face me, but his response shattered that hope. Lily made an observation that really put things into perspective. Throughout the duration of our friendship, Mark seemed to perpetually float between friend groups, typically due to issues revolving around a girl. In one instance, he split from a long-term relationship, and in another, distanced from a friend group because a girl chose someone else. The only consistent friend he had was someone from Lily and Jess's circle. Here's the kicker. Mark believes they're dating, while she is adamant that they aren't and has no interest in pursuing a relationship with him. She has since severed ties with him as well. I know the popular sentiment might be, you should have seen the signs. And yes, hindsight is 20/20, but I genuinely believed in our friendship. It's hard to accept that what I was perceiving as genuine might have been contrived. Lastly, to address some comments that have labeled me as a wuss or a pushover. Empathy and trust in friends aren't weaknesses. I value relationships and believe in giving the benefit of the doubt. It doesn't make me weak, it makes me human. Everyone has their breaking point, and I've found mine. The silver lining is that he's now out of my life. I've realized that self-respect is paramount. I'm fortunate to have someone as supportive as Lily by my side. She's proud of how I managed this ordeal, and contrary to some comments, values my empathy and perspective. We've had deep discussions about this entire situation, and she acknowledges the difficulty of such confrontations. Let's see. Mark cozies up to OP's girlfriend, talks him down to her friend group, undermines their relationship, puts her against her friends, and then lies to OP about it, and OP wants to salvage the friendship? If anything, Mark undersold just how much of a people pleaser OP is. Man, I need to find some friends like you. Guys with hot girlfriends who won't bat an eye to me moving in on them. No, but in all seriousness, he's totally right about you. Neither I nor my girlfriend would ever allow something to get to this point. Boundaries exist for a reason, and you need to learn to set them. Allowing this kind of stuff to go on is why people get cheated on. To any guys reading this, if your friend starts trying to hang out with your girlfriend all the time and you allow it to go on, don't be surprised when she cheats on you. I think I'm destroying my family, and I'm not handling it well. I'm a 25-year-old male with a wife of 2 years. We have a beautiful daughter together who we accidentally had when we were 18. No regrets, obviously. She's 6 right now, and she and my wife are everything to me. I work in a dangerous field. It pays well and was something I got into when we found out she was pregnant. I make good enough money that my wife can pursue her dream of doing an online business now that our daughter is in school. My childhood best friend joined me in this field. We were both directionless after high school, so we jumped into this together, and he was my bro for life. I say this because I saw what happened to him on the job a couple of weeks ago. A mistake was made by one of our fellow coworkers, and it resulted in his passing. He left behind a girlfriend of 1 year and a daughter as well. I had to break the news to his girlfriend on my own, and it was tough. I told her I'd make sure that whatever her and the kid needs, I would be there. I've already assisted in bills, and I've been by a few times to console her. With this, I've also been hitting the gym to keep my mind off of things, while also letting my anger and frustrations empty themselves. Because of this, I haven't been home a lot lately. Last night, I got back very late and my wife was up, asking where I've been and what's been going on. I told her that I had just been working long hours and been stressed from work, so I've just been taking drives to relax. She mentioned my friend's girlfriend came by the house on Saturday asking where I was, so she didn't believe me. She asked, "Do we need to talk about something?" And I just said, "No, everything's fine." And she kept pestering me about why she was at our door and something not adding up with me lately. Something went off in my head and I started raising my voice and said, "There's nothing to talk about, we're good." And my daughter came out of her room because she heard us going back and forth. My wife looked at me quietly and sternly said, "I don't know what's going on with you, but you need to get your crap together. We need you, and it feels like you went missing, and I don't feel like I can rely on you." And she took our daughter with her and she left. I've been crying a lot lately, and it's just not something I want them to see. It's not something I want to talk about or really know how to. It's the hardest thing I've had to deal with in my life to this point, as I'm not a super emotional person. Most of my life, I really had to look over myself, as my dad wasn't around and my mom had her own issues that prevented her from being a great mother, but I don't blame her for it. Usually I've been able to figure it out, but I also always had my bro, and now I don't. His own little family needs help too, and I just feel like crap really hit the fan, and I don't know if I fully processed it. That's not even including the fact that I don't know if I'm losing my own family at this rate. I don't feel comfortable about so much right now, and I don't think it's fair to put that on anyone else's either. I don't know if it's an ego thing or me trying to be the man, but truthfully, I don't even know. It feels better typing this out and just posting this to the internet. Feels like I'm at least getting it out. So thanks, random internet strangers. Edit. I want to make this clear. I did reach out to my wife and asked her to come home and if we can talk about what's been going on, and she agreed, but that I have a lot of explaining to do, which is fair. Also, thrilled that this managed to somehow turn into me cheating on my wife. Nice, Reddit. The few responses that are helpful and respectful I do appreciate, just too many here are chronically online and try to spread their misery. Did you tell your wife about the contributions you're making to your late friend's family? She's asking for communication. Give it to her. Explain how his passing made you feel, how breaking it to his girlfriend made you feel. Tell her you've been blowing off some pressure by hitting the gym. She is your person. She's the one who vowed to be there for you. By keeping this in and trying to do everything yourself, you're preventing her from being able to support you, and in the face of this event, you do need the support. You may have had to look after yourself before due to parents not being able to, and you may have figured that that would always be the best case, but you have someone who loves you, who's asking you to explain so she can help. You're not good, you're grieving. You're having a tough time. Your prolonged, unexplained absences are an issue for your wife. You are not good. Hiding that fact won't change the fact. Be vulnerable, be open, trust in your wife who loves you, that she will support you in this tough time. Please, for your sake and theirs. There's nothing to be gained out of you shouldering all of this alone other than resentment and miscommunication, and you're going through a tough enough time without that on top. Update. So after begging my wife and daughter to come home, I told her I'd lay it out and I'd be an open book. They got home later Monday night and we had a late dinner. I just wanted to spend some time with them, especially my daughter, so we put her to bed kind of late. After that, my wife and I sat down. I told her the full rundown. Initially, she felt disappointed I kept it from her, saying that wasn't fair to her and I need to be a better communicator. She didn't care about the money really, just more so how I kept her in the dark for so long and that I don't need to tackle everything on my own, which I appreciated. She then asked me to really talk about it and how I'm feeling about everything, trying to understand where I'm at and basically consoling me. We did that for about an hour and there were a few tears, but again, I wasn't trying to be an emotional slab. She understood why I've been distant and been getting home late, and now it makes more sense why she came around and she forgives me for all of that. I told her I'd like to keep helping them and that we have more than enough money to do so until we can either get a pay cut, sue, or all of the above. I would also like her and the kid around more, and she understands how close I was with them and how I see them as my sister and niece at this point. She was close with the girlfriend years ago too when we were younger. She agreed on all of that with the condition I drop down to 4 12s a week. She said if we can afford to help them, I can also afford to take more time off to explore therapy and spend more time with our family. She's been wanting to talk to me about it for a while, and this was the condition she wanted because she did feel like it was a bit of a betrayal. So I could tell that she was leveraging a bit, as she said, "We aren't supposed to have those kinds of secrets." And I just pulled her close and told her, "I can do that." And we hugged and I gave her a kiss. We laid on the couch for a bit, just talking, and I definitely felt better putting it behind us. So now, next week, I'm looking into both a grief communications therapist, since she wants me to work on communicating better, and she said she'll want to attend every once in a while too to see how it's going. She also asked to keep an open mind to moving to a different part of the company for safety reasons down the road as well. I know some request a little update, and now that everything's settled, I figured I'd share it. Despite some of the awful people that were replying and accusing me of cheating, there were a good number of people who were trying to be helpful, and I appreciate that. You take the good and bad, and with that, I hope this maybe helps others. Close your bank account? Yes, sir. So this happened a few years ago, but I love telling the story. Background. I work at a local credit union, similar to a bank, in back office support. Most of my customer contact is through the online chat and message systems. I have never worked in a branch. So one day I get a message from this dude demanding to know where his new debit card is. Not asking, demanding. I check and let him know that it was mailed about 2 weeks ago and he should have had it by now, but I would be happy to mail him a new one. Or he could come into a branch and we could print him a new one on the spot. He asks to have one mailed. I verify his address. He was less than a 10-minute walk from one of our branches, maybe a 5-minute drive, but whatever. You want to wait for the mail, be my guest. And I mail him a new card, thinking that was the end of it. Nope. A week later, he messages back, enraged that he's not gotten his card yet. I let him know it'll take 5 to 10 business days. They are sent regular mail, we have no tracking on them, etc. And he's welcome to come into a branch to get one printed right now if he'd like to. He was not a fan of that. Tells me that I personally have caused him to get fees. I look at the fees, they have nothing to do with the card. They're from online sites linked directly to his account and routing number. And that I need to refund all $200 in fees. This would be in addition to the $100 we've already refunded for the year. Here's the thing, if you ask me nicely, I'll probably move heaven and earth to get fees refunded, even if we've already refunded the max limit for you that year. We are all human, I get it, and I do feel that some fees charged are stupid and morally objectionable. If you demand I refund you fees, the odds of those getting refunded just dropped by 99%. So I tell him that I will not be refunding his fees, and he goes off on me and tells me to just close his account. So there's a few things we need to send a request to close an account. The account has to be positive, his was, but barely, have no loans on it, including credit cards, not have a balance of over a certain amount, and we need their address verified, which he had done when I sent him a new card. So I say, I'm sorry to see you go, but I understand that you need to do what is best for you financially, and I send the request to close his account, and then I wait. A week or so later, I get a call from a teller at a branch. They have this gentleman in front of them outraged that his account was closed and asking what happened. I let the teller know that he sent a request to close the account, so I sent the request to our back office to be processed. She relays this and he starts calling me a liar, saying that he never requested this and he for sure never asked me to close the account. Not sure if he thought that we just delete messages and have no records. Anyway, I take screenshots of our messages and send them over to the teller and listen as she shows him them on her computer. I can hear her trying not to laugh as she goes, "Oh, well, yes," and she thanks me and ends the call. Later, she messaged me telling me that he apologized for going off and we reopened his account and that she has never had to stifle laughter that hard before. Entitled neighbor wants copy of my grandma's will. When my grandma was diagnosed with cancer, she opted for no treatment. She had watched her husband go through chemo, radiation, and surgery, and he was miserable the whole time. She didn't want that for herself, and her family supported her. Over the next year, she gifted items to family and friends, told us to write our names on the things we want, take what we wanted, etc. There were no conditions. No, you can't have that. It's a family heirloom meant to go to Aunt and her kids, or to Dad and his kids. We all knew what those items were and who they were going to, so that was easily settled after she passed. The house was inherited by my father, who very suddenly and unexpectedly passed away 2 weeks later. I inherited the house at that point. The next door neighbor, who we'll call Todd, came over several times, upset that he and his kids, 21 and 19, weren't invited to my grandma's funeral. There wasn't one. We were all too busy reeling from my father's passing, weren't presented with a copy of the will. It only included family members. And he knew Grandma loved his kids like her own. She didn't. She complained about them coming over all the time, stealing her water to fill their pool, and she had to tell them to stop calling her Grandma. He wanted to know if I would allow his kids to go through the house to see if there was anything they'd like to take to remember her by. Okay, first, dude, my grandma passed 4 weeks ago. And dude, my dad passed 2 weeks ago. I thought he was awfully rude, but I offered to let them go through the boxes I had packed that I was planning to donate, and he was offended. I mean, mortified. He said his daughter and son had their hearts set on some items that were family heirlooms, and I literally laughed at him. I explained they were family heirlooms and would be staying with me, and 2 of the items had already gone home with my brother. He said, "My kids were her family, and she would have gifted those to him. They should have been included along with everyone else when everything was divided up." Keep in mind that none of us even knew this guy or his kids other than the neighbors next door. They were never at any gatherings that were held at her house, and the only time I ever heard her talk about them was when she complained about them, especially when she caught them using both her hoses to fill up their pool and then came over complaining because she had put locks on the outdoor faucets. Luckily, Todd's house was in foreclosure and he moved away about a year later. Am I the jerk for telling off my soon-to-be sister-in-law after she was mean to my wife? For the past 2 days, my wife, who's 37, and I, 47, were visiting my wife's parents' house along with all of my wife's siblings. She's the third of 5 kids, as well as their partners and kids. Both my wife and her twin niece and nephew, via her sister, have birthdays the past week, and so each person has gotten a day to celebrate their birthday with the whole family, and yesterday was the day my wife's birthday was celebrated. Among the guests were my wife's oldest brother, Dan, who's 42, and his new fiancée, who's 35, Tina. Tina will be Dan's 3rd wife. She also happens to be Dan's former mistress. Both of Dan's marriages and a previous engagement all ended due to Dan's cheating. Tina is a fitness instructor and must be very into healthy eating because every single meal we've had so far, she's had to comment on how big or small her portions can be for each dish. I am very thin and have no interest in working out, though Tina has made many comments about how middle-aged men need muscle-toning workouts that seem to be directed at me and one of my brothers-in-law. And my wife is beautifully plus size. For dinner yesterday, my father-in-law and I made a big dinner with lots of dishes that my wife loves. The whole point was for my wife to indulge herself and enjoy her favorite foods, and indeed she did. Later that night, my wife wanted a snack, so she went to grab something from the kitchen while I was in the bathroom. I overheard Tina talking to my wife and nagging her about how she was already hungry again. My wife said something to the effect of, "It's none of your business." And as I was coming out of the bathroom, Tina told my wife,
You know, it's easier to keep your partner interested when you can be your best self.
My wife was clearly very hurt by Tina's comment, so I told Tina, "That's rich coming from you, because no amount of time spent on your appearance will ever keep Dan interested for long." This was apparently the wrong thing to say. Tina got very upset, told me I was being a jerk, then stormed off to her and Dan's room. Dan later came out and told me I was being a jerk and that it was low to comment on his cheating. I told him that the comment Tina made about my wife was disgusting. Obviously, my wife is very happy with what I said. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Very well done for defending your wife. Unfortunately for Tina, what you said about Dan is likely to be true and they both know it. Sure, there's unpleasantness, but some people are not reasonable or kind and won't change their behaviors unless you make it sufficiently unpleasant for them. Tina will hopefully think twice before saying anything like this to your wife again. My cousin is having a baby and demands I hand over my savings. I, 24 female, am a bit paranoid when it comes to money. I didn't grow up in poverty, but times are tough, and the idea of living paycheck to paycheck makes me uncomfortable. It's important to mention that now I have a stable, good-paying job, but I struggled a lot during college since my parents weren't able to save enough for my college fund, so I worked bad jobs and I was constantly exhausted during those years. I still ended up in some debt, and I want to be free of it ASAP. It's also important to mention that I come from a pretty religious family. When I landed this job, I decided to start an emergency fund. I put aside a few $100s every month so that, in case of anything happening, I get sick, lose my job, etc., I will not end up in more debt or even worse. The only people that know about it are my sister, who also plans to start her own emergency fund after she graduates and lands a good job, and I 100% trust my sister, so I think my aunt or someone else overheard us talking about it. Now the issue is this. My cousin, 22, male, his girlfriend, who's also 22, is pregnant, and they decided to keep it even though they know darn well they can't afford it. None of them have a stable job, inheritance, or anything. A few days ago, he came to ask me to give him my emergency fund since he's having an emergency. I was speechless. I asked him what was he talking about, even though I knew, but I couldn't believe someone can have this audacity. He told me he knew I have some savings and he desperately needs them. He didn't even mention giving the money back. I told him those are my savings for when I have an emergency, but he pulled the family helps family card. I still said no. While I understand they are in a difficult situation, I still think it's not fair that I'm asked to pay for his mistakes. I told him they should think more about what they're going to do in the future and how they're going to support this kid if none of them have a stable income. And if I give them my savings, that money is only enough for a few months. I didn't mention not having the baby or adoption or anything, just that they are irresponsible for having a kid when none of them are financially stable. He eventually left me alone, but started to tell the rest of the family that I told him to not have the baby, which is not at all true. My parents and my sister are on my side, but the rest of the family has started to harass me and are calling me a godless jerk. So, am I the jerk for keeping my savings? Not the jerk. His lack of planning is not your emergency. This story is also a good example of how letting other people tell your story usually works against you. For the members of your family that you care about, I would reach out to them and clear up any misconceptions. Obviously, the people calling you godless are probably not the people you want around. You could even say that you meant adoption. I'm religious, and I don't know of anyone that has a problem with giving up a baby for adoption. Not the jerk. In my opinion, it doesn't matter who would tell this story. What they'll hear is, cousin needs financial help, and OP didn't help him even though she has the money to do it. Respectfully, that's just not true. It always matters who tells the story first. If his family thinks you are so awful, why aren't they handing over their cash? OP, I don't know if anyone else besides my parents has any savings, and I don't want to bring this up because I'm afraid I may give them another reason to harass me. Not the jerk and far from it. If you give him money, he'll probably come back asking for more. You earned your money. His kid is not your burden and not your problem. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her cousin? Please let us know.
Rule number 1 of having lots of money. Never tell anyone you have lots of money, especially if they're family.
Karen tries to steal my husband from me. It doesn't end well for her. I'll call her Tina. My husband, who's 33, and I met each other at a ski lodge 9 years ago. I was with my daughter at the time and a female friend and her kid. My husband was with his 2 brothers and 3 sisters and a few friends. There was a singing competition, and both of us were set up by our friends to enter it. Sparks flew during our duet, and the rest is history. Back to our first meeting. This was the first time that I caught on to my sister-in-law's disturbing behavior. After the singing competition, he and I went to the cafe to chat. His middle sister, Tina, who was adopted at birth, came storming up to us and demanded he come back to their group. She never looked at me and whined when he shut her down. She ran off crying and apparently took her sister's room keycards and locked them out so that they had to stay with the friends in the other room. Fast forward to when we bought a house together. We had a housewarming party and invited family and close friends. Tina showed up in a club outfit. She ignored me the entire time and hung all over my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time. She kept recalling tales of them when they were little and how close they were. She'd kiss him on the cheek, hug him, and touched his arm when laughing. He was visibly uncomfortable, so I stepped in. At first, I just thought she had a crush on him, but the way she was acting looked like she was the girlfriend and not me. She was going around reminding and telling everyone that he used to say he never wanted to have kids, but now he's playing daddy to my daughter. One of my friends said she thought Tina was weird for talking about how hot his modeling pictures were from when he did print work back in college, and that her favorite photo was of them at a beach in Hawaii during a family vacation a few years back. Then things go south at the end of the night, when he gets down on one knee and proposes to me. She started crying and ran to the restroom. Their dad went to check on her and then drove her home. I knew exactly why she was upset, but my husband always equated her behavior to jealousy because she never had healthy relationships. After that tantrum, she skipped our wedding, baby shower, our kids' birthday parties, and other family events that we attended. I was fine with extending invitations because I knew she wasn't going to show up. She had some sort of mental breakdown and was in and out of treatment for years. Now I have to say, I wish nothing but the best for her, and I don't know what kind of issues she's going through, but I don't want her disrupting our peace. I'm currently pregnant, and our baby shower is at the end of this month. I'm having it a few months early because I'm at risk for going into labor early, like I did with my other 2. My mother-in-law called to RSVP and stated Tina would be riding with them, and if it was okay if she brought her new boyfriend. I was surprised because we haven't seen her in years, but I was apprehensive to agree. Eventually, I did agree and hoped that she resolved whatever caused her so much distress when she was around my family. Well, it took all of 24 hours for her to start her nonsense. She texted my husband paragraphs at 3 a.m. telling him how she felt about our family. First, she went on to say how much she missed them being close and how I came in and destroyed their close relationship when I barely said 50 words to her in 9 years. She asked him if he was happy with his life because, again, he used to say he never wanted kids or to get married. She then asked if he thought about her in all this time and if he could meet up with her before the baby shower and talk alone, face to face. That was the last straw for me. I asked my husband if he knew she was in love with him, and he just shrugged and said he didn't doubt my theory. He admits her behavior has always been weird and dramatic, but he didn't pay it much attention because there were many siblings and they all hung out all the time. I asked him if he could uninvite her and this new boyfriend because I think she's going to bring drama to our baby shower. He said he wants to talk to his parents first and see what kind of state she's been in. But I know in my gut that she's ready to ruin our day with her theatrics. So, am I the jerk for wanting to uninvite her to my baby shower? Edit. For those of you wondering if anything ever happened between them, the answer is no. I am 100% certain of this. Update. This will probably be my last update since my husband and I decided that we need to be completely removed from sister-in-law's drama so we can focus on having a healthy pregnancy and a family life. I have an appointment with my doctor tomorrow morning that was scheduled weeks ago to check on the baby. Thank you to those of you who are concerned about me and the baby. My husband ran home because Tina blew up his phone, texting and calling. Now, my husband always texts or calls me on his lunch break to check on me, even before the pregnancy, so I knew something was wrong when he didn't. Since he left Tina on red, she started calling and sending a slew of unwarranted and degrading texts about me and our kids. So basically, Tina being Tina. He didn't run it by me, but he sent her a long paragraph, which he showed me when he got home, basically telling her off and told her that he would rather never speak to her again than listen to her talk bad about our family. He told her that she would never be invited to any of our family functions and that she needs to check herself back into the hospital if she thought that their relationship was ever anything closer than it actually was. He closed it by saying he would let the family know the reason she was uninvited and that he hoped she's either seeing a therapist or would find one immediately. I'm not surprised at his response because the things she said pushed him to the breaking point. He called his parents and the oldest biological sister, whom he's close with, and explained to them why she's never allowed to visit our home. He shared all of their text messages, and they were mortified. He asked them not to share our address, and when we changed to new numbers. They assured us that none of them shared this information with her because she actually asked for his work schedule and mentioned driving up a day early to surprise him. My father-in-law had the most to say, and I get it, it's his daughter, but he hadn't shared much info beforehand with anyone besides his wife. He said he always knew that she had a little crush on him, but after her outbursts at our housewarming years ago, they had a conversation about her behavior, and she told him that she had been keeping a diary about him since she was a teenager. She explained it was to process her emotions and to challenge negative thoughts. All I heard was that she wrote about him for years. So there's several journals in their home, probably enforcing her beliefs. Apparently, she only strayed away from my husband because my father-in-law kept her in check and was able to get her hospitalized several times before becoming a threat to anyone. I don't know if all of her issues come from the love that she has for him. Typing that just made me feel nauseous, but I hope she gets the help that she desperately needs. He asked that they speak with her about his last text, but that we don't want to know the outcome. They told us they would deal with her and apologized for thinking she had resolved her issues. My in-laws are saints, and I thank them for believing us and keeping her away from us all these years. Luckily, she's currently living with them due to her issues, so they're going to speak to her tomorrow morning. The biological sister-in-law called me when we got off the phone with the in-laws. She told me that she was really sorry because she's the one who hooked the new boyfriend and Tina up and suggested that she show him off at the baby shower, but admitted they had only been dating for like 2 weeks. She said she sent the text Tina sent to my husband to the new boyfriend because that's one of her best guy friends and she wanted to protect him. So I'm pretty sure they're probably not a thing anymore. I'm kind of nervous how Tina will deal with 2 rejections so close together. The 2 sisters aren't that close. Someone pointed out that Tina could potentially be dangerous and hurt somebody, and this really scared me. My husband's going to upgrade our alarm system and purchase more cameras. I don't work summers and will most likely be out on bed rest by the time I have to go back to work, so he wanted to ensure that the kids and I were safe when he's away from the house. I forgot to mention, we live about 5 hours away, so she would really have to go out of her way to show up here if she somehow found out where we live. So that's it, basically. This is my last update. I called out my brother's girlfriend for being a gold digger after she Googled the cost of our Christmas gifts. My brother James has a girlfriend, Lindsay, who he's been dating for 7 months. He decided to bring her to Christmas at my house, stay over Christmas Eve, and leave the next day after lunch. I had met Lindsay at drinks before this, and she seemed nice. When they arrived, Lindsay walked in and complimented my decorations, large tree in the foyer, and asked how much they cost. I was a bit surprised by the question, but I just said, more than I'd like, and moved on. Throughout the evening, she asked several questions centered around money. She asked my husband how much he paid for our house, my stepdad how much money he made in his previous job, how much my watch cost. She even Googled one of our art pieces to see how much it sold for, and started talking about how crazy it was that we spent that much, which frankly was very uncomfortable. My stepdad pulled my brother aside and asked if there was a problem, but my brother just said it was normal for her to do that, but he did say he'd speak to her about it. On Christmas morning, we all gathered around to open presents, and thankfully, Lindsay hadn't said anything else, so I figured James had spoken to her about her intrusive questions. However, at lunch, we were talking about plans for January, and Lindsay proudly said she didn't know how we could afford to do anything in January as she added up the total we had spent on gifts, and then proudly proclaimed the total amount. The whole table went silent, and honestly, I was equal parts shocked and annoyed that someone could be so ignorant. I looked at Lindsay and said, "You are the world's most diligent gold digger. Seriously, would you like to be the family accountant since you're already tracking expenses?" Lindsay stuttered out an apology and tried to explain, but my stepdad just changed the conversation and we moved on. She was mercifully quiet for the rest of dinner. After they left, my brother messaged me saying that I'd really upset Lindsay and I was out of line with what I said. I argued that he had said he had talked to her and he clearly didn't. Not that someone should have needed guidance to know how crass her comments were. He's saying I owe both of them an apology, but I think Lindsay's behavior was disgraceful. My parents say Lindsay was wrong, but I probably should have said something in private, or they could have, and I shouldn't have said something in front of everyone. Am I the jerk? All of these everyone sucks here's and you're the jerk replies are dumbfounding. Have any of you people ever had an interaction with an actual human being? In what world is asking people about how much money they make and adding up the totals of Christmas gifts normal? Not the jerk. She was being incredibly rude and obviously making everyone uncomfortable. I just don't understand why everyone here is making excuses for her, semantics of the terminology or not. Why would you sit there and add up the total of what a family spent and then tell them about it? They know. Whether you grew up with money or not, common sense is required, unless she's on the spectrum, which is the common excuses the "you're the jerks" and "everyone sucks here" people are giving. But come on, people here always get defensive when someone posts here and is from a wealthier background, constantly making excuses. If this was reversed, would you guys be okay with it? If she Googled how much a pair of socks or how much an old TV was and passed a comment, if she went on about how little the family spent and then declared at Christmas morning, "Oh, you guys should have loads of money in January since you spent so little during Christmas," would you all be making the same comments? I doubt it. You'd be up in arms and calling her a snob. Not the jerk, and I really don't get the people saying you are the jerk. It's so unbelievably rude to make so many comments about money. I could see maybe 1 or 2 offhanded comments, but to fixate on money so much that you tally up how much money was spent on Christmas presents and then announce it to the whole family? Don't apologize to your brother. Why should you? His girlfriend came into your house for Christmas and immediately started questioning you about money and practically appraising everything in your house. She should be apologizing to you, and your brother should be apologizing on her behalf. If someone is rude to you, you're allowed to defend yourself and shut them down, which is what you did. Maybe next time she'll learn to keep her mouth shut and not constantly talk about money. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or their brother's girlfriend? Please let us know.
How much did you pay for that suit, Reddit boy? Anything over $20 and you got ripped off.
Am I the jerk for removing the door to my son's room indefinitely? Yesterday, while I was making lunch, I heard a really loud sound, as if the ceiling was falling or a bookshelf had fallen. My husband, 41, male, and our daughter, 17, were out. The only other person in the house was my son, who's 16. I was pretty sure he was in his room, which is at the opposite side of the house from the kitchen. So while making my way there, I checked every room and everything seemed in order. I knocked on my son's door and called his name. No answer. I must have knocked and called 3 times before trying to open the door, which was locked. At this point, I was getting really freaked out, thinking that maybe he had tipped his wardrobe or bookshelf and it had fallen over him and he was passed out on the floor. I was basically screaming in his name, but no answer. I have no idea how I did it. I just threw myself into the door and it broke. Now, clearly the door was already weak. I'm thinking termites. But yeah, it broke. My son was fine. He was freaked out about the door, but he was fine. The sound was his TV with the volume at the max, apparently, and he didn't answer me calling because he didn't want me bothering his movie. His words were, "You were screaming like a harpy and it was annoying. I was trying to watch the movie. Fix the door." I said no. I wasn't going to fix it, since to fix it, I would have to buy a new door, and doors are expensive. And as soon as his dad got home, he would remove the door entirely as it was too broken to just stay there. He got really mad, said it's his right to have a door. He deserves his privacy. I said he had a door, and while I was the one that broke it, it was a consequence of his actions. So if he wanted a door, he would have to buy it. I know he doesn't have the money for it right now. Until then, no door. He can change in the bathroom. He said, "Forget you." I said he was grounded. Am I the jerk about the door? My husband is fine with it, says only I know how scared I was, so only I can know the appropriate punishment. I'm now terrified that if anything happens where we really need to reach my son, we won't be able to. But I have calmed down since, and I'm wondering if I'm the jerk. Not the jerk. Replace the door, remove the TV from his room. You would be the jerk for not getting him a new door. He needs privacy. He doesn't need a TV. Think of different and better ways to discipline that don't remove his privacy and space. Kids typically don't need a TV. If he didn't answer because of the TV, take that away and not his door. I usually say parents are always jerks for taking away doors, but this, absolutely not the jerk. But you and your husband need to sit down and think about how to fix your son's behavior ASAP because he's way out of line. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her son? Please let us know.
Yowza, having a son that acts like that, no wonder some folks are deciding they don't want to have kids.
Being fired because of lack of training? Okay, let's destroy your company. This happened to me quite a while ago, but it's always left a sour taste in my mouth and I want to share it to alleviate the issue. I worked for a car crash rental company. When you had a crash in your own car, we were the company your insurance company would get in touch with to hire out a car to you or keep you mobile until yours was fixed or written off. I was a call handler. I received files of individuals needing a vehicle. I would make contact and book them a vehicle. This was all new to me. I did not come from this working background. The line manager was aware, and so was the floor manager. Both promised full training and support. However, this was not adequately given. The training consisted of, there's the phone, there's the files, go at it. The first couple of days were nerve-wracking, but I picked things up relatively quickly, and my line manager was happy with what I was doing. Then on day 3, I had a booking. Having not done one before, I asked for help, and I was confronted with eye rolls, sighs of disbelief, and an obvious inherent lack of motivation to help. Begrudgingly, I was taken over to a computer that was situated in the middle of the office floor. This was the only computer in this multi-million-pound company that had access to a national database of insurance information and, most importantly, personal details and driving license information for everyone in my country. I asked why we only had one computer. It turns out this database requires a license and the company can't be bothered to pay for it, so this computer was given to them via a third party who has the license. However, if they ever got found out, they would receive a heavy fine and the third party reprimanded for providing an unlicensed company their personal license. The general reason this was used was to clarify the customer's details, to make sure that they were qualified to drive and that these details were real and not fraudulent. I followed the manager's teachings exactly and rented out a vehicle. The following day, the office floor seemed off. I was getting weird looks and I could hear whispers. Knowing something was up, I did some digging. I chatted to the IT team during break, just general stuff. Then I asked about the database PC. The guy was very happy to tell me not only that they hide it when they get inspections, but also where they hide it, the extremes they sometimes go to, and he even gave me the network and computer's name. I went back to my cubicle after the discussion and cracked on. On day 5, I found out what the problem was. My rental wasn't done correctly, and instead of my line manager taking the blame due to poor training, she had thrown me under the bus. I was called in to see the floor manager. I explained to the floor manager exactly what happened, exactly how much training I had, and who gave it to me. I even showed proof with the notebook I had showing the notes I had made in it. He accepted what I said and told me to go back to work. Later on that day, when I got home, I received a call. I had been fired, regardless of it being my line manager's fault. I later found out that they were having an affair with each other, which explains why I was given the boot and not the line manager. I was livid with what happened. I followed all the instructions to the letter. It wasn't my fault that I was taught incorrectly. So I did what any self-respecting, poorly treated, and unfairly dismissed employee would do. I called the database company. I reported my previous employer for using their system without a license. I told them the network and computer name. I told them where the computer was situated. I gave them the servicing schedule, and I even told them where to find it when they hid it, due to inspections. Fast forward 6 months, and I'm happy in a new job. I haven't heard anything from or in regards to the car crash rental company. That is, until I wander into my local supermarket, and lo and behold, my line manager was there, working at a checkout. Turns out, after I left, the company had a surprise inspection from the database company. They found the computer with someone else's license on it, found records of it being hidden on planned inspections. They found usage dates and how many times it was used. The company was reported to the authorities for mishandling personal information and were fined, but it didn't stop there. A full investigation was launched by the police, and the company was fined for fraudulent activities. The owner was caught and given a suspended sentence and was also forced to pay a fine. The database owners were given compensation from the car crash rental company for the licensing breach. Some more authorities got involved too, leaving the car crash rental company in a horrible place. All in all, 6 months after I left, and following one 10-minute call, I brought the company to their knees. It was sold and absorbed into another, with most management losing their jobs. Word of warning, treat your staff right, don't have affairs, and if you need a license to use a database or software, pay for it and don't use someone else's. Am I the jerk for losing it and telling my in-laws to stop calling me mama and trying to erase my identity? I have 2 kids who are both 2 years old. I hate how everyone thinks of me as being just a mommy now. I don't get to be my own person. I'm just mommy. Husband doesn't face this. He gets gifts from everyone that have to do with his hobbies. Me? I get a bunch of mommy stuff. Tee-hee, mommy needs wine, and like matching outfits. I don't mean like one of those cutesy matching pajama sets that the nurses and horse girls wear in their staged Christmas Instapics. I mean like people actually think I'm going to go out in public wearing some cutesy matching outfits with my toddlers, as though I think they are mini versions of myself, or dolls. From the time we got to the in-laws, it was mama this and mama that. At some point, my sister-in-law said it, and I said, "You know my name is Carmen, right?" She just looked at me funny and said, "Of course, silly." I said, "So why do you keep calling me mama? You aren't going around calling my husband papa." Sister-in-law just looked at me like I had 2 heads and was like, okay. This went on all over Christmas. "Here you go, mama. Want another slice, mama?" At that point, I was just like, do you guys mind calling me by my name instead of calling me mama? The same sister-in-law from earlier did the whole golly gee doe-eyed thing and said, "But you're such a good mama." I said that I'm not just a mom. I gestured to the things that husband got from them for Christmas and said, "Why didn't you guys get him anything that says papa? Everything you gave me is somehow related to me being a mom. Why does he get to be his own person?" Mother-in-law grabbed my hand and squeezed it and said that she was sorry that she made me feel like this. She was just so excited about being a grandma, and she never really thought of things like that. I was feeling a little better until sister-in-laws 2 and 3 started going after me. One of them did that whole, "Are you okay? Do you need to talk to someone? You sound so angry. It isn't healthy." Faux concern thing that's meant to shame you for having any emotional response. The other one was angry and saying that, "Is being a mom somehow beneath you? And do you think you're better than the rest of us?" And all that. When we finally left, he asked me why I'd kept it in for so long, and I said that I haven't. No one listened to me before. I've said these things plenty of times. I've always asked them to call me by my name and not some disgusting nickname that boils me down to giving birth. He nodded, but said that I had put a big show on this weekend and that I needed to apologize for the outburst at some point. I said sure, as soon as sister-in-laws apologized to me for dehumanizing me for years. We're at a stalemate. Am I the jerk? No, your sister-in-laws owe you an apology and you owe them nothing, even after. I'm so petty, I'd start calling them sister-in-law all the time and only getting them sister-in-law stuff. Not the jerk. Once again, this is a case of family members needing to be confronted about their behavior because politely asking them to stop didn't work. And then it's all, why didn't you say something? Your answer to your husband is exactly correct. If you need to apologize for your outburst, then they need to apologize for their failure to listen to you until you reached your breaking point and had an outburst. Not the jerk. Your mother-in-law reacted appropriately, in my opinion, saying she didn't realize and had no ill intent, which I believe. Your point is well made, and your sister-in-laws just seem like people who can't take feedback. Many of my female friends who had kids have expressed the same frustration as you. You're right to speak up. Everyone sucks here. I don't know, I feel like you made this into a way bigger deal than it was, and I get why they think you don't like being a mom or you think it's beneath you. Who cares what they call you? You literally are a mom, and a lot of times when you're around kids, others will say things like, here, give this to mama, or take this to mama. They're not going to be constantly saying your real name around your kid. Your kid knows you as mama. There are so many horrible things going around the world right now, and it's crazy to see petty little things like this that don't even matter. Was it really worth ruining your relationship with your family? Do you even care about your husband's relationship with his own family? Disgusting nickname. Oh, please. You're the jerk. Get over yourself. Is being a mom somehow beneath you? I mean, kind of. Priorities. Being myself, parenting, partnering, other adult duties. Well, unpopular opinion, but I think you're the jerk, at least a little bit. Some moms call each other mama as a term of endearment. You have every right to not like it. Every right to directly tell them that you hate being called that, so please stop. However, I'm almost positive that nobody was trying to erase your identity. If you're feeling that way, maybe that's something that you are struggling with yourself. It's hard being a mom. I should add that the whole mama thing really depends on where you live. I'm in the South where it's common practice, but depending on where you live, I guess it could just have a different connotation. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her in-laws? Please let us know.
Hey Reddit boy, I think I'm gonna start calling you Papa Reddit.
Not one, but two wild Karens teaming up on me. So for a little context, I went out of town to help my grandmother who wasn't doing too well health-wise. So she asked me to run to the store to grab a few things for her. When I got to the store, I started shopping like any other customer. To avoid being bothered while I'm in the store, I always wear those big over-the-ear headphones that clearly say, I'm not going to hear anything you say. Well, I continue shopping, and I pause my music to listen to an audio message in my group chat, when all of a sudden I hear someone say, "Excuse me." I ignored it because I didn't think it had anything to do with me. But then I hear, "Excuse me," followed by fingers snapping, but even louder, and the voice sounded like nails on a chalkboard. Next thing I know, I see this old Karen rush in front of me and snap her fingers in my face. At this point, I'm now visibly annoyed, so I take my headphones off and just stare at her. She goes on to say, "Geez, are you deaf?" And I reply, "No, but clearly I don't want to be bothered." She goes on to say, "Wow, you all rude. Is that any way to speak to a customer?" And I look at her confused. But then it dawns on me that I'm currently wearing a red shirt, which is the uniform of the employees at this store. Once I realized that she thought I was an employee, I immediately attempted to clear it up by saying, "Sorry, ma'am, but..." And before I can finish, this Karen begins to lay into me, calling me everything under the sun except my name. At this point, she threatens to get a manager to get me fired. But wouldn't you know it, a manager just so happened to be coming down the aisle to check the disturbance. When the manager got there, she began to ask what was going on, and before I knew it, Karen started telling the manager how I had verbally assaulted her and was calling her all types of inappropriate names, and finally she finished by saying, "I want this employee fired." Now, under normal circumstances, you would think that the manager would clear up the confusion about my employment with the company, or lack thereof. But boy, oh boy, I could not have been more wrong. The manager then takes the side of Karen and begins to tell me off about how I'm not honoring the employee code of conduct. At this point, I'm livid, because not only did I get verbally assaulted by one Karen, now I'm getting my ear chewed off by another Karen, and a manager no less. Now, I can usually keep my cool in rough situations, but this one had officially pushed me over the edge. So after the manager finishes telling me what's what, she looked at me and said, "Do you have anything to say for yourself?"
I looked at the first Karen, then looked at the second one, and asked the manager, "Are you new here?" The manager says, "No, I've been here for 8 years." I then proceeded to ask, "Have I ever interviewed with you?" She then said, "No, but I don't." And before she could finish her sentence, her face turned bright red as she realized that I didn't have a name tag on or any of the employee equipment. This is when I yelled to both of them, "I don't work here." Both the Karen and the manager looked absolutely mortified. I told them to get out of my way as I made my way to the register. As I get to the register, I get approached by another manager of the store, and at this point I'm thinking to myself, "You have got to be kidding me." But to my surprise, the manager explained that she somewhat heard the conversation and did not want me to leave the store with a bad taste in my mouth. So to make up for the nonsense that I had just endured, this manager, who we will call Maria, comped my entire transaction, which was only about $50. She assured me that she would personally take care of the manager Karen that was yelling at me. I don't know what happened to both of them, but I do know that my grandma got what she needed free of charge. Am I the jerk for reminding my stepmother about how she really met my father? I, 21 male, was at my father's house for Christmas this year. Most of the paternal family was there, but the only people relevant to this story are my dad, who's 49, his wife, Sasha, who's 39, and my sister Jasmine, who's 18, and her boyfriend, Mike, who's 21. Jasmine is my only full sister, and we're extremely close. She's currently 3 months pregnant, which obviously isn't ideal since she's only 18, but I'm going to support her regardless. I do not like her boyfriend, but he's good to her and able to provide for her and the baby. Sasha has always hated Jasmine. No one has any idea why, and my dad prefers to ignore it. After the Christmas dinner, Jasmine, Mike, my dad, Sasha, and I were clearly up when Jasmine suddenly felt nauseous and went to go sit down. Mike went with her. This is when Sasha decided to begin talking badly about her for being a pregnant teen and for being unmarried. She then started saying that she thinks that Jasmine got pregnant on purpose because Mike's family is wealthy, which doesn't make any sense since our family is well off too. Sasha is known for saying horrible things to get a reaction, so I was ignoring her. So was my dad, until she asked me how I felt about my younger sister having a kid with someone older than me, literally only 4 months older than me. At this point, I was done, so I stopped washing the dishes and I told her to shut her mouth because she broke up my parents' marriage. That's when my father finally decided to get involved, but I went on and reminded Sasha of the fact that when Jasmine was little, she was in the hospital a lot, and she, Sasha, was one of the nurses that cared for her on the ward, and she began an affair with my father. I also decided to remind her of how her eldest child, my half-sister, was born 8 months after she married my dad. The situation devolved into shouting, and turns out a lot of my paternal family didn't know the truth about how my dad and Sasha met. I ended up leaving, and so did Jasmine and Mike, and a few other people. Now, my dad is demanding that I apologize to his wife for embarrassing her and making her look bad in front of the whole family. Now, I want an unbiased view on whether or not I am the jerk for rising to my stepmother's bait, her insults to Jasmine, and going lower by exposing her. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. She has no room to talk about your sister being a pregnant teen when she's a homewrecker. I bring the same stuff up to my father's wife. I'll never refer to her as stepmother since she's only 2 years older than me when she starts pointing out flaws in others. Sometimes you just have to put them in their place and never apologize for telling the truth. Am I the jerk for telling my brother-in-law he has a good life because he's living off of my sister? My family's Vietnamese, and our parents were typical Viet parents. They immigrated to the US, and the entire time we were growing up, they emphasized the importance of education. They pushed us hard, and extracurricular activities that didn't boost our chances of getting into college were not allowed. I hated seeing my friends join the cheerleading squad while I had to be in band. My friends were able to go to school dances while I had to go to tutoring. I resented my parents for many years and told them so. Their answer was always the same: hate us all you want now, but thank us later. I'm now a surgeon, and all my siblings have high-paying careers. The siblings with the lowest salary makes almost $160,000 a year as a supervising pharmacist in a hospital. We're all living very well and are very happy with our lives. Now that I'm a mother, I can admit that my parents were right. My sister, an attorney, is married to Bill. He's not Asian and works as a chef at a restaurant. Unlike movies or cooking shows, he's only making about $50,000 a year, while his wife is pulling in about $500,000 as a partner in her firm. Over Christmas, we were gathered at my parents' house, and I was asked by my niece, my brother's daughter, about my career. Her parents are pushing her into the medical field, and she wanted to know what it takes. During our conversation, she said she wants to be a teacher and not a doctor. She told me she feels pressured into studying too much and can't enjoy life like her friends can. I pointed out that I went through the exact same thing, and teaching won't give her the life she's accustomed to. I said if she's a doctor, she can always teach on the side. I told her about a colleague who's also a physician and volunteers to teach in his old high school. Brother-in-law overheard us and chimed in about how she should follow her dream of teaching because money does not equal happiness. He pointed out that he makes as much as a teacher and lives a great life. I didn't appreciate his nosiness, so I replied that he has a great life because my sister makes 10 times his salary and bought him his brand new $125,000 electric car for Christmas. I turned to my niece and told her unless she wants to live off of someone else, she needs to make her own money. Brother-in-law got his feelings hurt and went to complain to my sister. She told me I was wrong to say that to brother-in-law and that I should apologize. I'm refusing since I only stated the truth, but now they're refusing to come to my house for Viet New Year. I'm hosting the entire family, unless I apologize. Wow, you're the jerk. Bill heard his niece getting some very one-sided advice. He chimed in with his perspective, which he is just as much entitled to as you are to yours, and which is just as valuable to your niece as yours is. That's not nosiness, that's looking out for his niece, exactly the same thing you were doing. Your ad hominem attack was completely uncalled for, and it's sad that with all your education, you haven't yet learned that money doesn't buy happiness. If it did, there wouldn't be so many miserable rich people. I'm glad you're satisfied with your life, truly, but as a single woman working for a nonprofit at nonprofit wages, I assure you there are many different ways to achieve a good life. She didn't lie, and brother-in-law was being nosy. His wife is providing the good life for him, so yeah, he wasn't looking out for his niece. This isn't, was I technically truthful? This is, am I the jerk? And while OP may have been truthful, as far as they are aware, they were absolutely a jerk. OP's definition of the good life, and yours too apparently, is based on extremely narrow parameters, which is fine. If it works for you, then it works for you. But just because that's your definition doesn't mean it's the only definition. It's crazy to assume that he wasn't looking out for his niece just because his advice differs from yours. And even using your definition, I would absolutely not encourage anyone to go into the medical profession right now. Higher education costs are up, potential salaries are down, job satisfaction is down as doctors spend more and more of their time complying with insurance and government regulations and less time working with patients. The math is very different than it was a mere 10 years ago. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her brother-in-law? Please let us know. Boyfriend gets mad and destroys my Christmas ornament. So my boyfriend hates Christmas. He doesn't like giving or receiving gifts or any of the festive traditions. We've been together for 4 years and he knows I love Christmas, so he plays along. Well, last night we agreed we'd take the tree down next week, but when we came downstairs today, he started taking everything down. His reasoning being, Christmas is over and the tree takes up space. Now here's the thing. A lot of the ornaments we have are like family heirlooms. Most of them are older or the same age as me, 24, or were handmade by my deceased grandmother. My boyfriend started just tossing the ornaments on the table, which started stressing me out. I was telling him to stop, to calm down, or either move and I'll put everything away. He was getting angry and started yelling at me because I'm trying to keep the tree up. Well, you probably guessed it. He threw an ornament and it broke. It was one of my grandmother's handmade ones. I took one look and just broke down, like ugly crying. He started getting more mad, telling me I'm being childish and stupid for getting upset about the tree. I feel like I'm the jerk because I started yelling at him to step away from the tree because he was going to break more ornaments. And when he wouldn't and kept calling me childish, I kept yelling at him and telling him that he's being a jerk. After he put everything away, he tried to talk to me, still telling me that I was being childish and stupid about the tree and ornaments. I get how it might be childish, but I don't have memories of my grandmother, but I have a picture, and growing up, whenever I was sad, I would hug and talk to her. I only have a small amount of jewelry or handmade ornaments or trinkets from her that are extremely special to me, so I don't know if I'm just being stupid and blew things up. Edit. The ornament is fixable. It was a handmade clay wreath, and luckily only part of the bow and the part you hang on the tree broke off, which I can fix. To all those showing concern, my boyfriend is never like this. He's always shown me, my belongings, and my family respect. He has no Christmas bad experiences from the past, and despite not liking Christmas, he has always put an effort into doing my Christmas traditions. That's partly why I was so confused on if I was the jerk, because this was so out of the normal for my relationship. He went upstairs for an hour, and when he came back, he apologized. He said he was getting stressed and frustrated about me yelling, and he wasn't being as careful as he should have because of it. He said it was really an accident and that he felt bad about breaking the ornament. I'm planning on having a discussion with him as the way he handled the situation wasn't right, and we'll see how things go. Edit 2. Oh boy, so this is getting a lot of attention, which is why I'm adding a second edit. I had a headache and took a nap for a few hours. When I came back downstairs, my boyfriend sat with me and gave me a real apology. He said he handled the situation completely wrong and that it was entirely his fault and that he never should have talked to me that way. He said he felt absolutely horrible about breaking the ornament and he should have treated them better and stopped as soon as he saw me crying. He hasn't been feeling well the past couple of days and has been exhausted after spending the week with our family. On top of which we found out we have to get tested to see if we might be sick. He thinks he's just irritable because of that, which he said he knows isn't an excuse. I know many of you reached out and are worried about my safety, and I really appreciate that. My boyfriend has never mocked or made fun of my interests or traditions. He's always happy to participate and do things with me. He's always cared for my happiness and well-being and has always been supportive. He's never made me feel unsafe and has always settled any arguments by talking and communicating. This outburst was so out of the ordinary, which is why I was so confused. I think you need to throw out the boyfriend rather than the tree. There is just no excuse for this behavior. Absolutely none. So don't let him gaslight you into thinking you are somehow to blame here. For the sake of your Christmas spirit, your long-term happiness, and the safety of your precious ornaments, get out now. I'm not saying this lightly, but a man who can be so callous with things you hold dear isn't someone you should want in your life. Not the jerk. My in-laws freaked out over me not baking a ham for them on Christmas. I'll start this off by saying I'm a born and raised vegetarian. I've never eaten meat, let alone learn to prepare it. My husband and I are newly married and recently bought our first apartment. It's small, but it's ours, and it's across the road from his place of work, which was a bonus since he's often on call. Per his family tradition, the most recently wed couple hosts Christmas dinner. I initially tried to offer it to my sister-in-law as she had wanted to host the year previously, but brother-in-law married her 2 months after Christmas, so she never got the opportunity. Additionally, we are a vegetarian home, and our one-bedroom apartment isn't ideal for hosting. While my sister-in-law was thrilled, the rest of the family insisted that we had to host. I was told that as long as I got food for everyone, that it would be fine. Here's where I might be the jerk. I misunderstood. I thought this meant as long as I had enough food and made sure to accommodate food allergies that they would be happy. Christmas Day, my husband had to work until 4 p.m., so I was left preparing dinner alone, but I still put together a feast, including a plant-based roast. People started coming over and even commenting on how delicious everything smelled. Once my husband arrived, he greeted the family and joined me in the kitchen for finishing touches and taking everything to the table. The family began to gather, and a few people commented on how good everything looked, until father-in-law asks, "Where's the ham?" My husband explained that I wasn't comfortable making meat, especially ham since undercooked pork can especially be dangerous, and that instead we had a plant-based roast alternative, and father-in-law proceeded to make remarks about how they drove an hour for plants. Then, even the people who had made positive comments changed their tune, talking about how it was missing something, etc. At one point, mother-in-law said she wished they had had sister-in-law host. My husband snapped and told them to stop disrespecting the meal, and myself since I worked hard on it. Mother-in-law argued back that I disrespected them by not respecting their dietary choices and that she believed she was clear when she told me to prepare food for everyone. My husband told her that if she was going to continue to be disrespectful, that she could leave. Shortly after, everyone left, but my husband has been getting texts since about how my selfishness ruined Christmas, possibly the last father-in-law would be around for. I feel horrible that he's in the middle of all of this. This was my mistake, but at the same time, I was clear we are vegetarian and that I didn't even want to host. I guess I'm looking for an outside perspective. Am I the jerk? Edit. For the people asking if his family was aware, we just had a fully vegetarian catered wedding 4 months ago, so yes. Not the jerk. Hosts determine the menus. Guests do not determine the menus. You offered your best, and your guests were impolite and demanding. It's good that your husband had your back. Do not host these people again. If they want a specific menu, let them figure it out. Not the jerk. 1. It's your house. You make what you want. They can make all the meat they want next Christmas at their house. They basically imposed on you anyhow. 2. You went out of your way to cook for them and probably pay for all the food too. You can make whatever you want. 3. You being vegetarian is a dietary choice. Them craving and expecting meat on the holiday is not. If anything, they were disrespecting your dietary choice. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or the in-laws? Please let us know. Never force someone to host a meal that they don't want to. I threw away the elf on the shelf and ruined a Christmas after my husband's prank. For context, this year was the first time we would try the elf on the shelf with our kids. We have 3 kids, Lucas who's 9, Andy who's 8, and Claire who's 5, where Lucas and Andy are from our past relationships. However, Miles, my husband who's 37, has accepted Andy as his, and so did I. Every Christmas is special for Andy. His birthday is on December 24th. His dad started a tradition where Santa would have consideration with him for being a kid of Christmas, so he feels magical and special. I always try to give him that. Last year, I left Santa Claus footsteps, ate a carrot, and grass that he left for Rudolph, stuff like that. My husband doesn't think it's a good idea I do all that for him, and I'm showing favoritism, so we should shut it down because of my ex's decision to create a tradition without considering my other kids' feelings. I disagree since I do consider the 3 of them mine, but he asked if we could do something else, like the elf on the shelf. I had no problem with it, but I didn't know how that works. He explained it to me quickly, and since he was the one who offered, I let him do it. We bought the cute elf. My kids named it Bob. Later, my husband explained to them that they should behave and never touch or hold Bob if they don't want it to be naughty. At first, it was cute to see them spy on Bob, try to see it fly each night. Andy was the most excited of all. I found him one night talking with it, asking it if Santa still remembered him. But my husband took seriously the behave or Bob would be naughty part. Lucas was his first victim after he didn't do his chores. The next day, his face was drawn on with Sharpie markers. Then Claire, who touched Bob, and her favorite onesie was destroyed. Apparently, Bob had cut some pieces of it while she was sleeping. Miles was having fun, but I could see my kids weren't. I talked to him about how we should lower the pranks. He agreed, but wanted to catch Andy since he hadn't broken any rules. I told him that Bob's supposed to tell Santa instead of being naughty. We argued, but he finally agreed. Fast forward, it's Christmas Eve, and in the afternoon, we had some of Andy's friends to celebrate his birthday. So the kids were playing in the backyard, but my husband looked sus. I decided to look for Bob. It was supposed to be in the kitchen, but it wasn't there. I asked Miles where it was, and he told me, no idea. I started getting paranoid, but Andy asked me if we could cut the cake already. I put my best face on and went for it. The cake was in a box, and when Andy opened the box, he started crying. I took a look, and it's ruined. Bob was covered in all of it, appearing as if he had been eating the cake. Half of the cake wasn't even there anymore. Miles started laughing, and so did some of the other parents. My blood is boiling, and I grab Bob and throw it in the trash. Then I grabbed Miles. We have a terrible argument. He calls me a jerk for what I did to Bob, that I've ruined it. How are we supposed to keep the magic with our kids if I wasn't supposed to touch Bob? Edit. Hi everyone. So the responses have been really overwhelming. I'm sorry it took me some time to answer. I was kind of avoiding the post. 1. Andy's dad is from Canada. He visits Andy every spring, summer, and on Christmas break. This year he stayed for his job, so he isn't an absent parent. 2. After Andy's birthday, I told Miles to get out of the house, and so he did. He spent Christmas with my in-laws. I stayed with the kids, and all of them slept in Andy's room. My kids didn't want to leave their brother alone. The next morning, we opened the gifts, and I made sure that Andy could feel special after what happened on his birthday. So I wrote a note from Bob, saying that he's sorry if he scared him and his siblings. He didn't do his job correctly, so now he would be flying to the North Pole with Santa. And when he asked if Santa still remembered him, he did. Santa was really happy to see him. 3. My kids and I are okay. We're sleeping at my parents' house, and we would celebrate New Year's Eve here too. 4. Yes, Claire was using the onesie while she was sleeping. My husband took the idea out of a TikTok. And no, Andy didn't do anything to be attacked by Bob. Not the jerk. He ruined the birthday party with his juvenile prank, as he most likely ruined the joyful and childlike spirit of the occasion for the two other kids with the other earlier stupid pranks. What a horrible Christmas tradition to scare your kids with. A doll that watches over them and exacts vengeance. I usually don't tend to say this, but this action on your husband's behalf is horrible and worth of divorce papers being delivered. Elf on the Shelf is supposed to be a tradition to keep the kids' spirits and hopes for Christmas, not something the parents can use as an excuse to be bullies with their kids. It's okay to joke with it a little, but he took it way too far. Kids remember this kind of stuff, and now Andy would have a terrible core memory of his birthday. Also, ask Miles why he was so obsessed on getting Andy. Like, that's what freaked me out the most. Please, OP, get away from this dude, not the jerk. Just so I'm clear, 1. You and Andy's father came up with something to take the sting out of your son having a birthday on Christmas Eve, something which must truly suck as a kid. 2. Your husband decides that this is favoritism. 3. Your husband uses a toy elf to start bullying the kids, destroying Claire's favorite onesie. What? 4. Andy's behaving himself, however, and therefore Bob is unable to do anything to him. 5. This so annoys your husband that he decides to ruin your son's 8th birthday by destroying his cake in an act of pure, unadulterated spite. OP, you're not the jerk, but my God, your husband surely is. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or is her husband? Please let us know.
I don't think your kid will like my candy, lady, but whatever. So there's only a week left of summer. I decided to take the kids to the local amusement and water park today. As I've gotten older, the rides have gotten a little tougher on me. In addition, my daughter tends to get motion sickness rather easily. I don't like the way that motion sickness pills make me feel, so I always take a Ziploc baggie full of ginger candy along to prevent and soothe nausea. Today I had chewy mango ginger candies, hard plain ginger candies, and hard lemon ginger candies. For those who have never had these before, they're spicy. The lemon ginger is probably the mildest. The plain ginger is just plain hot. The mango ones are sweet and spicy, but they also stick to your teeth like crazy. They're definitely an acquired taste. As we're standing in line for the log ride, I pulled out my baggie. I choose a lemon one, as does my son, who's 13. My daughter, who's 12, asked for a mango one. While I'm fishing a mango one out, I hear the kid in front of us tell his mom that he, around 7, wants some candy. His mom distractedly says she doesn't have any candy. The boy says, "But she does." He turns to me and asks for one. I tell him I don't really think he'd like my candy. By this time, his mom has focused in on the interaction. As the kid starts to whine that, of course, he wants my candy, his mom just huffs and says, "You've got a whole baggie. Can't you just give him one? Come on, don't be greedy." Oh, you said the magic word there, lady. I say, "All right," and I dig out a lemon one. I'm not completely heartless. That's when the kid whines that he wants mango. Mango is his favorite. I tell him lemon is better, but he insists on mango. I tell him it's kind of sticky as I hand it over. The kid rips into it and starts chewing on it while my kids are just staring at him. Then he actually starts to taste it and a look of horror comes over his face. He screams and tries to spit it out. He's jumping around and flapping his arms. His mom is panicking and asking what's wrong. He's screaming that it's bad and it's hot and he wants it out. His mom tells him to spit it out. That's when I pipe up with the very helpful, "It's really sticky. What's left is probably stuck in his teeth. He'll have to wait for it to melt off if he doesn't want to chew it." The mom looks at me in disbelief and a shrug. Then she asks what the heck I gave him. Probably should have asked that sooner, lady. I answer, "It's ginger candy. It's good for nausea." I'm pretty sure if looks could kill, I wouldn't be here right now. We got to move up in line 2 spaces though, because she whisked her kid off to the water fountain. I'd like to think the kid will think twice about demanding things from strangers from now on. Plus, it was entertaining. Overall, the kids and I counted it as a win. Am I the jerk for telling my fiancé that his best friend can't be his best man? I know how it sounds. My fiancé, who's 29, is an amazing guy. He's sweet, funny, attractive, and hardworking. I, 29 female, was impressed with him from the moment I met him, and we've been together for 6 years now. We're devoted to each other and working towards building our shared life. We each put a percentage of our earnings into 2 funds, one for our wedding, which is a year away, and another for a down payment on a house. We each pay the same percentage, but I pay a much larger amount because I went into a higher income field. We budgeted it out pretty well. At this rate, we'll have enough to buy a home around the same time as our wedding, as we planned. As to the wedding, we both wanted a small one, and my fiancé and I decided to have a destination wedding. We're paying for the entire wedding ourselves. My family's pretty poor, so I've always been saving a portion of my remaining paycheck to be able to pay for all of them to come to the wedding for free. I'm also paying for one of my bridesmaids who went into teaching and doesn't make much. My fiance wouldn't really have the disposable cash to do that, but his family can afford to pay. They're somewhat wealthy, and they're happy to take the vacation. The problem arose last week. My fiance's best friend, Tom, who's 30, who he asked to be his best man, got into an accident. It was likely entirely his fault, as he was riding his motorcycle and he'd been drinking. He suffered significant injuries, is going to have some major medical bills, and admitted to my fiance he doesn't think he can afford to come to our wedding. My fiance wants us to pay for him several $1,000s and lend him money to help cover his medical bills. But especially with everything going on, my fiance does not have and is unlikely to be able to get the money to do either. I could afford to do both, but I don't want to. Truthfully, I can't stand his friend. He often rides or drives after he's been drinking. He doesn't have a job. He makes snarky comments about my fiance that he insists are just jokes, but that I know actually affect my fiance, and he lives in his parents' basement while ignoring their well-being. I was willing to have him up there as best man because my fiance considers him a brother and it's his choice. I wasn't happy about it, but I wasn't able to throw a tantrum about it. But with everything going on, my fiance has suggested taking a huge chunk of our savings for a house to help, and I said no. We got in a huge fight, and he called me selfish and cruel, at which point I lost it. I told him his loser friend did this to himself, and that there was no way in heck I'd be paying anything for his friend. I ended by saying, if he can't afford to come, he can't be your best man. He hasn't spoken to me since last night and slept on the couch. While I still think I'm on solid footing, I'm starting to wonder if I went too far. Am I the jerk? Just wanted to clarify, I'm not paying for most of my friends. Most of our friends are young, without kids, and they have good incomes, who travel a lot anyway. We chose a destination wedding in part because 2 of our close friends had one last year that a group of us went to and enjoyed. We told our friends our plans before making arrangements and made clear that we wouldn't be upset if anyone couldn't or didn't want to join us due to the cost. The one friend I'm paying for is one of my oldest friends who I knew wouldn't be able to afford it because she chose to go into teaching. She also came to the wedding last year after several of us pooled funds to pay for her because she chose a meaningful, needed, and underpaid profession. Since I wanted her as a bridesmaid, I just told her straight up that I would pay for her. Same with my family. They mostly don't have much money, so I've been putting aside part of my paycheck, outside of what we put into our shared accounts, to pay for it. If I wasn't spending it on them, that money would be going into my retirement account. I'm able to do that because I chose a more stressful position to ensure I'd be able to build up funds. My fiance intentionally chose a less demanding profession that he really enjoys, but that pays way less than he could make with his degree because he has a lot of concerns about money. His family are well off, so he never worried about being able to pay for their retirement or medical care. As a result, he has more free time, more enjoyment of his job, but does not have disposable cash right now. So I'm happy to pay for my friend and my family because I chose to sacrifice a lot of career enjoyment to ensure I would be able to have extra money for things like this. And my friend and family have done nothing wrong. His friend doesn't deserve anything from me, and moreover, I'm not interested in enabling his horrible behaviors by bailing him out and paying for a free vacation. I'm not actually paying for my friend or family out of the joint account. Update. It's been a little over 2 months since my original post, and a lot has happened since. In the days after that argument, my fiance and I had a number of heart-to-hearts. We each apologized for how we behaved. He admitted that his friend had done some terrible things, and after some soul-searching, that he and his friend do not have a healthy relationship. He loves the guy, as his friend had been there for him through some tough times, but he knows Tom needs to change. I thought hard about several of the comments made on the original post and made a tough choice. I told him that I hated the idea of bailing Tom out and would never agree to help him with medical bills, but provided Tom made some effort to change, I would pay for him to come to the wedding with my own separate funds. I love my fiance more than anything, and I don't want anything to mar our wedding or the start of our marriage. Long story short, we sat down with Tom's parents, who were also fed up with him and had previously refused to help him, to discuss the best way that we could. We all ultimately agreed that we would cover some of his costs, us the wedding and his parents the medical bills, but only if he accepted responsibility for what he had done and hit some concrete milestones towards changing, including successfully completing a program at an inpatient treatment facility for his addictions. All 4 of us sat down with him to make this offer. I won't go into details, but it didn't go well. My fiance finally lost it and told Tom that he had stuck by him through years of bad choices, and that if Tom wouldn't get help, he didn't even want him as a friend, much less a best man. Tom told us all to buzz off. We hadn't seen or heard from him since then, and it's been incredibly hard on my fiance. Then, this past weekend, my fiance received a text from Tom. It wasn't long, but thanked him for everything he had done for Tom, apologized for everything, and let him know that he was on his way to a treatment facility. He hoped that he could stand at my fiance's side at our wedding like my fiance had always stood at his. My fiance's trying to be cautious, but it clearly meant so much to him, and I know he believes against all odds that his friend will become a better man. I have my doubts, but you know what? I hope he does too. Am I the jerk for not giving my sister her share of the college fund? A little backstory. We came from an extremely unfair family. For example, my brother got a car, 75% of our parents' estate, a big farm, land, and all the machinery for it, and they paid for his college. My older sister had to take out loans so she could finish her education. I never went to college because of my undiagnosed ADHD. Now I'm in therapy and starting to become okayish, but I have money because of sheer dumb luck. My younger sister, who's 22, started college 2 years ago. My parents offered to pay to rent a room after she didn't get a scholarship and a room in the dorms. I offered to pay her tuition and some extras for groceries, stating that I put aside a college fund for all girls in our family, my 2 daughters, my sister, a younger cousin, and a niece. This is just one account, and in my will, it states it has to be divided between these girls. My sister is the oldest, and everyone else is between 6 to 12, for college expenses, and the ones who already finished college by the time I die get nothing from that account. If I have more nieces, I'll add them too. Now to the problem. My sister decided to drop out, get pregnant, and marry her boyfriend/fiance of 6 months. I try not to be disappointed. I am, but I should stop talking about it. Today was the big announcement. I knew it beforehand so I could act all happy. And after the lunch, she pulled me aside and asked for the leftover of her college fund. I explained to her that there is no her fund. I already did this when she started college, and I'll be happy to pay for her tuition if she goes back someday, but she has to give me proof that she goes to college. She pocketed the last semester's payment because she failed to inform me about her dropping out, and I sent her the money. She freaked out because she counted on that money for a down payment for a 3-bedroom apartment, co-owning with fiance, but I stood firm in my decision. She accused me of trying to control her with my money and punishing her because she chose a different path in life, being a stay-at-home mom and not having a career. I'm only doing this because I watched our older sister struggle through college because even though she had a scholarship and student loans, she was broke. She lived in a crappy studio apartment with a weirdo roommate. She had to skip meals when she ran out of care packages from home. Update. About the last semester's payment, my sister offered to pay me back. It's sitting on her account. I gifted it to her as a baby and wedding contribution from me. And the college fund was a full misunderstanding. She actually thought that it's going to be divided between all girls while I'm alive. I explained why that's not going to happen and went into great details about our older sister's college experience. She was actually horrified. So it's all good between us, and I'm going to be a little distant. I had a long talk with my mom. She tried to act happy at first about my sister's plan, but she broke down eventually. She's worried too, because sister is making the same bad decisions that mom and I did. Right now we're trying to come up with a plan, how to help sister out without helping my soon-to-be jerk brother-in-law. Just to mention, even my father is against this guy in the marriage, but he tries to be nice because he's afraid he's going to lose my sister too. And a few words about my future brother-in-law. He's already tried to isolate her, who has a codependent personality and wants to play house with anybody who's willing to try it. Hard to watch this crap show, but when everything unfolds, she needs to know she got me and my mom, maybe my dad too, in her corner. Jerk is careful with me because they need the money, but he still tried some crap stirring with me. We'll see what happens next, but one thing for sure, after they split, one of 2 marriages ending with divorce here, so the chances are high, I'm gonna find my sister a good therapist. Boss's girlfriend thinks she knows my job better than I do, so I decide to comply. The customers are not happy. Let me set the scene for you. So I've been an apprentice at a small bookstore for the past 2 years now, only recently passed my exam to make me a certified bookseller. Before that, due to a very toxic work environment during lockdown, the only other full-time working employee whom I looked up to as kind of a mentor quit barely 4 months after I started my apprenticeship, and I've had to bend over backwards ever since trying to fill the holes that were created when she left. These past 2 years have been interesting to say the least. Starting with the store itself, it's really cute. The only problem is it's drowning in old books people drop off all the time and just too much stuff cramped into too little space altogether, resulting in chaos that makes it very hard to keep everything in check and not lose track of everything. So I've learned to adapt and combat this chaos by keeping lists of basically everything, double checking to make sure everything is in order, etc. This'll come in later. Now, as for my ex-colleagues, I'm on pretty good terms with most of them, except for one. Enter my boss's girlfriend. In the beginning, I didn't get why my colleagues didn't like her very much. Now, 2 years later, she's the main reason I'll be leaving this job at the end of September, because frankly, I'm fed up. If I put everything that happened in these 2 years into this post, it would be very long, so I'll just cut to the chase. Due to the aforementioned chaos that plagues this store, I double-check everything to avoid mistakes. This includes customer orders. Basically, we get the books, I find out who the book is for, I call the customer to tell them their book is ready to be picked up by them. Sometimes people order more than one book, which is where things can get tricky because not every order arrives at the same time due to an array of factors. Adding to this, we also order used books which have nothing to do with our computer system, which makes it extra prone to forgetting about something. Because this happens a lot with orders that include more than one book, I just like to take a quick glance at the computer system to make sure nothing's missing from the order before I call. Because in the past 2 years, I've learned that people tend to get annoyed after a while if you keep calling them about an incomplete order. So, say you've ordered 5 books, and only 4 arrive, with the next one probably arriving the next day. We'll wait until everything is complete, and then we'll call. Obviously there's exceptions, but you catch my drift. Then a few weeks back, the girlfriend noticed I was doing this and started to exclaim her dissatisfaction with the way I was handling the customer orders. She thinks doing this quick extra step cost me valuable time that could be spent elsewhere. I would like to add that she spends a lot of the afternoons in the store online shopping and being on phone calls with her daughter, and is all in all completely unnecessary. I thought she had a pretty crappy opinion, since she rarely even does customer calls. I tried to explain to her why I do things the way I do, and how it prevents customers from getting annoyed. She then proceeded to tell me, "Well, it doesn't matter what you think. This is our store." This upset me, because if I weren't there, the store wouldn't be running in the first place. They managed to get almost every other employee to quit with the work environment they've created the past 2 years, and I'm the only one who's in the store every day from 9 to 6. She also made it a point to tell me how she thinks it's rude that I always talk back and always have to have the last word. I took this pretty personally. I genuinely just want to bring good ideas in and make the workflow as smooth as possible, and if someone comes along with a point like this, I feel like I have to make them see my point of view. Anyways, since I won't be in the store much longer and I have run out of craps to give, I've decided to just do as she told me. Now, say you've ordered 5 books from us. 2 arrive on the first day. You get a call from us. You ask, "Really? All 5 books are there already?" "No, sorry, only 2 arrived today." Then the next day another 2 arrive. You get another call from us. You see how this gets annoying after a while, right? So yeah, I just stopped double checking and everything just kind of went downhill from there. At risk of me seeming unprofessional, but to my great satisfaction, customers are getting more and more irritated with each call, where I don't seem to know their entire order, incomplete orders, etc. It would have gotten to this point sooner or later anyways, since I'll be gone by the end of September. It just gives me that little bit of personal satisfaction after 2 years of this insanity. Am I the jerk for giving my mom the silent treatment after I found out she was pregnant? I, 20 female, always had a complicated relationship with my mother. When I was growing up, she always had problems with addiction. Basically, what I remember from my childhood with her is living with her until things got so bad that our family had to step in, moving in with them, my mom getting better, then moving back in with her, only for her to get worse and the cycle to start all over again. However, since I was 13, I live with my uncles. They're incredible, and they've always been the parents that I needed, but since then, my mother has not asked me to stay with her again. My uncles always explained that she had a disease, and her leaving me with them was proof of her love for me. You can imagine that my relationship with her has always been complicated, but I've always tried to understand that this is something that's out of her control. In the last few months, she's been on a good streak again, stopping all that crap. She's moved in with a new boyfriend, and he seems to be someone that really wants to help her out. We don't see each other much, but I try to call her at least every 15 days, and my parents always try to report to me about her improvements. However, last week, after a long time, she was the one that called me and asked me to go out. I tried not to get too excited because I already know what she's like, but at the same time, I was happy. When we met, she explained how her boyfriend has helped her to cut 100% contact with anyone who influences her to go back to her addiction, and how she wants to be a better person. She even started therapy and went to rehab for a while. I said I was very happy and asked what finally motivated her to make that decision. And then she told me that he helped her, but that the big motivator that gave her the strength is that they decided to start a family, and she wanted to meet me in person to let me know that she's pregnant. She said she needed to be better, to be present, and that's what's helping her focus on recovery. It hurt me, that they were worth it, but I wasn't. I decided to leave before our lunch was even over, and I ignored all forms of contact from her thereafter. As people say, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything. However, yesterday her boyfriend called me. I answered because I didn't have his number saved, and he started yelling at me. He said I was a jerk, that for him, I would never have contact with his family because apparently no one knows where my mom is, and what hindered her improvement was my attitude. My grandparents are also angry with me, and they said that I am very irresponsible and that I didn't have emotional responsibility with someone very vulnerable. My parents said I didn't do anything wrong, but I have my doubts. Not the jerk. She shouldn't have another kid if she's so emotionally unstable with her addiction battle that she can't handle the current one having their own feelings. The new one is going to have them too. I'm 48, male. My ex-wife, who's 47, has reached out to me after years. We were married for 7 years and divorced about 15 years ago. The reason at the time was our vision for the future wasn't compatible. I wanted a family, white picket fence, etc. She wanted to remain free and travel until her last day. FYI, at the time we were married, she shared my side of the vision. There's a cliche about remaining friends, but honestly, I think we did at the beginning. She met someone and married him in 2010. He was older and had money and gave her that lifestyle. We were close enough that I was invited to the wedding and made a brief toast. Obviously, with him in her life, we drifted apart and basically played Facebook tag. When we divorced, I was depressed and got therapy, but after she was married and gallivanting around Europe and the Caribbean, I got really depressed. Therapy only helped so much. It took about 5 years to really pull through and be myself. I tried dating again and it never worked out. I honestly felt that I could never have been happier with anyone than I was with her. I regretted putting my foot down about how I wanted to live. Meanwhile, she was Facebook documenting their attempts to get pregnant, the one thing she was dead set against at all costs, to the point that she wanted to get her tubes tied just in case. Fertilization clinics, IVF, etc., but nothing took. They announced they had gotten a surrogate to carry their kid, and unfortunately it didn't work out. Her husband passed away in 2021. People only found out a month after his very private burial. I messaged her saying I would be there for her if she needed someone to talk to. I did not hear back. Aside from posting inspirational messages, etc., she went dark. On my birthday this year, I received a card from her wishing me a happy birthday, thanking me for being such an important part of her life, and saying maybe we'll be in touch soon. This last Friday, she called me. It was the first time I spoke to her directly in over a decade. It was light conversation. I didn't bring up much of the last 10 years, but she asked if I was free to get coffee or a drink today, Tuesday. She was going to be back near where I live Monday through Thursday. I agreed. Since then, we've texted a bit back and forth, being slightly more intimate. I get the sense she's testing the waters, so to speak, to see if there's interest there. From my end, it's a double-edged sword. There really would be interest in seeing where it might go, but I don't think I could handle losing her a second time. I've asked a few friends, and they've been split down the middle. Don't get involved again versus see what happens. What do you think? Has anyone ever been in this situation where a relationship was rekindled after so long? And what did you do? What red flags or things to worry about should I be looking for? Always protect your heart, man. You two are completely different people now, and you should treat it as such. Don't see it as part 2 to your previous marriage. See it as getting to know someone new. A fresh start, be it friends or romantic partners. Be open to each other, but don't be desperately hopeful for a specific outcome. Get to know each other again slowly, and, if the time comes, have an open and frank discussion about what both of your intentions are. Leave nothing vague. Maybe just go have a coffee and chat. Why does it have to go directly to thinking about the future? Check it out, see if there's anything there. If not, enjoy your coffee. I personally wouldn't if I were you, but the problem is she moved on and lived her life, unlike you. You didn't really move on from her. You became depressed, couldn't really date. You were, and probably still are, stuck on the image of you two together with a family. This isn't healthy. You should really go to a decent therapist. If you two had moved on and found your way back to each other, I'd be all for it. But not this. She might just want a rebound from her husband, and in this case, it would end horribly for you. She might want a relationship and a family and knows you're available, so why look elsewhere? I just don't see this working out. But if you want it, then go ahead and listen to what your gut feeling is telling you, and I wish you the best. Am I the jerk for telling my son he needed to move out since he has a problem sharing his food? My son, who's 26, lives in the basement suite. He has everything he needs down there. My wife won't let me charge him rent because he's saving up to buy a house. Sure he is. He has a new car, a new motorcycle, and a gaming computer that's probably worth about $5,000. I came home the other day and there was a pizza on the counter. My wife wasn't home, so I had been planning on just having a soup and sandwich for dinner, but I was happy that she had gotten me a pizza. I grabbed a couple slices and sat down to watch TV. My son came up, saw me eating pizza, and started yelling at me for eating food that he paid for himself. This is Rich. He usually eats with us every day and eats food that I pay for. I told him that it was on the counter in my house, and that made it food for me. He has his own kitchen downstairs, and that if he doesn't want me to eat his food, he should keep it down there. He didn't agree and kept yelling. I told him that it was time for him to move out. 4 years of living in my house rent-free as an employed adult was enough, and that it was time to go. He shut up, took his pizza, and went downstairs. When his mom got home, she was really upset with me. He works hard for his money, and when he buys himself a treat, I shouldn't help myself to some of it. I've pretty much had it with her too. I told her that she had to start paying for his food and utilities since she was the one who thought he should not have to pay for anything to live here. She works part-time at her parents' company and uses the money for herself. I'm the primary earner. I pay for literally everything except her little luxuries. She pays for that stuff herself. She said that she would not. I said that I was cutting the household budget by 1/3. Her and her son were responsible for that part from now on. They're both mad at me for starting this fight over some pizza. Not the jerk. Sometimes the person completely being taken advantage of has had enough. Looks like you got to that point. Not the jerk. Freeloading son should absolutely share his pizza since you don't charge him for rent, utilities, or food, and it was reasonable for you to think that it was something to be shared given it was in your kitchen and not the kitchen your son has to himself. You're the jerk. You're an adult, and even the father here. It wouldn't have cost you anything to ask your son quick if it's his pizza before eating it. Don't explode on your son over a slice of pizza because you, passive-aggressive, are fed up instead of communicating properly earlier. Karen girlfriend denied my marriage proposal as a joke, so I called the whole thing off. I'm 25, female. My girlfriend, Molly, who's 26, for the last 6 months started a joke with me that I've already made clear that I don't like. It consists of her saying no quickly to anything I ask. I know it sounds silly, but I ask her to get a glass of water for me. She says no, and after 1 minute, I'm almost getting up, she says she's joking and gets some water. I ask her to wash the dishes. She says no. I say I love you. She says no. I ask her to take her clothes. She says no. Everything is joking, and after 30 seconds to a minute, she does it, but she's addicted to doing it. I've already made it clear several times that I don't like it, even more so in I love you. She's the only person I can say that to, so it's special to me. And there are things that are serious, and I need her to answer seriously. And if she says no to everything jokingly, I can't tell when she's saying real no. It's happened before. I keep saying this is boring and I don't like it. She stops doing it and goes back to doing it after a week. After a brief discussion, because she played this prank in front of our friends, me asking, "Love, can you get me some medicine?" And she with, "No, kidding." She stopped doing it for 1 month. Yesterday, we welcomed my parents, in-laws, and 2 of our best friends to our house. Everyone knew that I was going to propose to her, and I called them because we always planned this proposal with our loved ones attending, participating in this special day. I asked her to marry me, and she said a quick no, and I was so grumpy, panicked, and upset, everyone looked in shock. For 30 seconds for her to laugh and say that she was joking, finally saying yes. I was so embarrassed and disappointed. I put the ring back in and said that I'd go take it out to cool off. I didn't even let her say anything. She kept texting me, not answering calls, saying it was just a joke and that I knew she always did that. She said that I left a difficult situation in the house because it was very clear that I had given up on proposing and did in front of my parents and in-laws. She stressed that I was making the situation uncomfortable because of a silly joke. Well, I slept in a hotel and I'm still in it. My parents supported me, but my in-laws are calling me the jerk for giving up on proposing, disproportionately humiliating their daughter. I just really think there's time for jokes, and that moment wasn't clearly. She knew I didn't like it and decided to do it anyway. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Why would you sign up for this permanently? Not the jerk. I used to have a boyfriend who did something similar. Every time I wanted to talk about something serious, like something that happened in the world, something that happened at work, something in our relationship, whatever it was, He would always, with 1 minute, make a joke about the subject, trying to diffuse the situation of me telling him about something I cared about and thought about, and it made me feel sad, etc. I asked him to stop 1,000 times, and he always said, it's just him joking and I shouldn't take things serious. I explained to him that this behavior made me feel like he takes nothing that concerns me serious, which he protested against and told me I try to make him look like a bad boyfriend. I tried doing it to him to make him see how it feels, and of course it would be a super drama because I would not take him seriously and I don't care about him. Yeah, right. Eventually I lost all respect and ended the relationship after 2.5 years. I couldn't and wouldn't take him seriously, and quite frankly, the disrespect towards me was making me feel grossed out by him, emotionally and physically. Of course, he complained, did not see this coming, why did I never say anything, etc. Not the jerk, and seriously, overthink this whole relationship. Girlfriend will not change, girlfriend does not respect your boundaries and feelings. She has shown you who she is, believe her. Move on and find someone who does. Not the jerk. Your girlfriend just learned a much-needed lesson on why you don't joke and say no when you mean yes. And you're not making the situation uncomfortable because of a silly joke. She is. She knew you don't like it, and honestly, who would? That would annoy anyone, but she did it anyway. What next? Is she going to jokingly say no during your ceremony? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or their girlfriend? Please let us know. Never stay with someone who doesn't respect you. You deserve better than that. Am I the jerk for not treating my stepkids equally? I started dating Daniel 2.5 years ago, and we got married last year. Daniel has 5 kids with his ex-wife. Ava, who's 11, Jason, who's 9, Isabella, who's 6, Sophia, who's 5, and Andrew, who's 3. Daniel's ex never liked Ava. She blames Ava for leaving her trapped in a relationship with her dad. When they got divorced, she said she didn't want anything to do with Ava. Ava was 8 at the time. Ava's mom leaving but having a relationship with her siblings really took a toll on her. The weeks Ava's siblings were with their mom were the hardest because it was a constant reminder that her mom loved her siblings and not her. She would barely get out of bed those weeks, so around 2 years ago, I surprised her with a day trip to the beach. We got ice cream, we went boogie boarding, went out to eat, and went shopping. It was the first time I'd seen her smile in weeks. I noticed it was helping Ava, so we started to go out more and more. When her siblings are here, it's something small, like dinner before therapy. But when they're not here, we go camping, we go hiking, we try new restaurants, we go back to the beach, etc. And she loves it. I don't spend nearly as much one-on-one time with the other 4 kids for 2 reasons. These kids already have a mom that loves them, and they don't need it as much. It's so much easier to do anything with 1 kid than 5. When I spend time with Ava, I stick her in my Honda and we go. When I have all 5 kids, we take a big passenger van and they fight over everything. It takes twice as long to go somewhere because I keep having to pull over and break up a fight. I do take all 5 kids out 1 to 2 times a week when they're with us, but it's not usually a big trip like what I go on with Ava. We'll go to the beach 20 minutes away instead of the one almost 2 hours away. We'll go on the walking trail by our house instead of a 4-mile hike. Sometimes we have picnics in the park. The big thing this summer is the amusement park. I'll take all of the kids with their dad or their nanny. We go on some rides together. Then one of us will take the older 2 to go on all of the scary rides that they want to go on, while the other takes the younger 3 to go on the smaller rides. Then we meet up at the water park. We've done this at least once a week this summer. Recently, my husband asked me to start taking the younger 4 on day trips like the kind Ava and I go on, because they're starting to get jealous. I said I'll try to plan more fun activities, but my trips with Ava aren't suitable for all 5 kids. He said I should try to treat the kids equally and either not take Ava or take everybody. I said I will when he takes all 5 kids camping or on a 5-mile hike by himself. He called me a bad stepmom, so I wanted to know if I was the jerk. Not the jerk. Why doesn't their father do as much for his kids as you do? I think, given the circumstances, you're not doing anything wrong here, aside from the misleading title. OP. Their dad works a lot and travels a lot for work. They are his responsibility, and he should make time to be with them. He knows how his ex is treating Ava, and you're supporting Ava, but he's demanding that you stop? He is not being a good father. Well, what do you think? Should OP only take the kids on a trip if all of them can go, or not? Please let us know. Taking 5 kids out on a trip? I think that'd be enough to make my head explode. Am I the jerk for charging an 8-year-old rent? I really don't think I'm the jerk, but hear me out. He gets an allowance every week. This is for helping with the dishes, cleaning his room, and being tidy. Nothing crazy. His allowance is $25, so $100 a month. However, I want to charge the boy $20 a month for living expenses, leaving him $80. His mother thinks there's something wrong with this and that he's young, so his money should be his. My intention is to teach him about money management, as that's something that's very important to me. I have not thought about consequences if he can't pay the rent. There likely wouldn't be any. I'm available for any additional info. Edit. I am the stepfather. I can increase his allowance, but I don't think that's what makes me the jerk. I'm working, but I'll thoroughly look through the responses. I appreciate the feedback. Edit 2. Off of work now. Alright, I'm the jerk. I'm going to give the kid an allowance as I planned anyway. He can save for big purchases for himself, and we can talk about the fun stuff when he's older. I have a savings account for him already that I put money into. I appreciate the caring Redditors messaging me about calling the authorities and asking for my information. I'm glad to know you care, but that won't be necessary. I had a bad idea. I thought it was fun and everyone would win. I would like to thank you all, and I hope that you have a wonderful end to your Wednesday. The vitriol is really strong here. For clarity, father's out of the picture. I'm not stealing from his mother, and I'm providing the allowance. Besides, I've already changed my mind. Wife will have a good time reading this when she gets home. Edit 5. You are all correct in that I didn't think of the implications of taking from my son and the emotional damage that could cause or anxiety within him. That's the last thing I want. Edit. She knew I was the jerk, but feels like I set myself up for failure with this post. She's laughed until she cried, so thank you for that. Yes, this was a real idea I had and a real conversation I had with my spouse. That's not plural. I wasn't pushing anything. And clearly, there wasn't foresight in it. I hope all the parents here can learn from the comments, because truthfully, I feel like we're all just winging raising kids, and no one knows for sure what's in their best interest sometimes. There's more than one way to cook an egg, so to speak. All we can do is learn from each other and our experiences. You're the jerk for charging rent. However, having him put that money into a savings account where he could see it grow would be a better lesson. And $25 a week at 8? Lucky kid. You're the jerk. If you want to teach him the value of money and saving, continue paying him for his chores and teach him how to save and budget for things he might want. Show him how to save a percentage of his allowance and track it. There are so many more age-appropriate ways to teach your kid how to manage their money. Illegally charging them rent should never be considered one of them. My parents did crap like this to teach me money management. Guess what it taught me instead? That all interactions with my parents are monetized, that they don't actually care about me, and that I can't trust them. That's the only thing they understand is money. My father is now passed, and I barely talked to him when he was sick. I essentially do not speak to my mother. She only initiates conversations with me at this point about, shocker, money. You would be the jerk. I can see how you think this is well-intentioned, but please reconsider and think about other options for helping him learn. Well, what do you think? Would OP be the jerk for charging his 8-year-old rent or not? Please let us know.
I made $5 a week when I was little if I did my chores. What about you?
My parents are kicking me out of my house so my golden child sister can move in with her family. I'm 34, female. My sister, 31, was the first among 4 siblings to have a kid, who's now 5. My niece is incredibly spoiled by my sister, our parents and extended family, and my parents bend over backwards for my sister's requests, like canceling their anniversary trip because my sister asked them to babysit while she goes on a girls' weekend. This spring, my boyfriend and rock in my life passed away. At the same time, I lost my job. I had a lot going on, and I moved back to my hometown. My parents own a rural property that they used to rent out. The property had been empty for a while and is fairly run down. My parents invited me to stay there rent-free, told me it was my home for as long as I needed it. I invested a lot of my time and money, found a remote gig, into getting the house fixed up. I also made friends with Ola, a Ukrainian refugee with a young daughter. Ola was struggling, and I invited her to stay with me for a couple of months while she gets back on her feet. I could use the company as well. She was very thankful, but hasn't made a firm response yet, and she's trying to make things work independently. My parents had no issue with this, until recent drama. My brother-in-law had been working for a shady company which skirted regulations for profit. The law had caught up with the owner, who folded the company and left the country. I'll cut this short given the post-character limit. A few other things went down, and my sister's family abruptly moved to our hometown, moving in with my parents. Almost immediately, my parents and sister approached me to swap. I move in with our parents, and sister and her family take my place. They said the house I lived in was too large for one person, and it would be so much better for my niece to live on a beautiful property in nature. I didn't understand. My parents have 2 guest rooms. My sister and brother-in-law and the kid could have their own rooms. I sure didn't when I was 5. My brother-in-law is still loaded from his old job and could easily get them a place too. They're buying a flashy car. When I mentioned my work on the property, it was dismissed. When I reminded them about Ola, my parents were outraged I was still intent on helping someone else and not my sister and her family. They kept making out my sister's situation to be nearly as bad as Ola's. Eventually, it came down to my parents saying, "You're living on our property. You'll do as we want." I said, "Well, you gave it to me and said this was my house as well, to be my home for as long as I needed it. But if we want to talk in property terms and not family terms, evict me then." My parents are not evicting, but I receive daily calls and messages from them and extended family, guilt-tripping me and calling me a jerk for not giving up the more comfortable space to my sister, who is in such a difficult situation and has a kid. Only my brothers see my side, but since they are young men in college, their opinion means nothing to my family. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. Am I the jerk? Everyone sucks here, but this is your parents' property. They've apparently not given it to you in any real, definitive legal sense. They should definitely compensate you for fixing it up though. OP, I'd get it if that was their issue, that I occupied their property and didn't observe their rules. I would feel betrayed given what they had said, but I'd get it. But no, apparently the reason everyone hates me is I can't see just how much my sister needs this, unlike me. I frankly do not understand all the negative responses here. Are you missing the fact OP is still grieving a very recent loss? It's not like she's been there for years. At most, she's been there for less than 6 months. She's barely settled and beginning to heal. They could give her a timeline if sister hasn't figured something out in a few months, but it's incredibly disrespectful to do so. And who buys a new car when they're unemployed? Sounds to me like sister expected this home once she knew she could get it for free. Not the jerk. OP, thank you for being one of the few comments to acknowledge what happened to me. One of my brothers pointed out today this wasn't much acknowledged by family, especially since my sister arrived, and maybe that's why I'm so hurt. So thank you. Everyone sucks here. You make a lot of fuss about your sister and niece being spoiled, but you're leeching off your parents just like she would be if she lived in that house instead. It's obnoxious of them to try to throw you out when they told you that you could stay there for as long as you needed to, but it is their property. Seems like you could all stand to grow up and pay for your own housing instead of squabbling over mom and dad's resources. Y'all Americans are so cold. Everything has to be legally binding for y'all to acknowledge it even. Sometimes the word of a family member does mean something even if it wasn't legally acknowledged. She's not the jerk. Her birth givers gave her their word, so it's natural to feel betrayed. Sure, it's naive to be this way, but it's working out, right? They're not evicting her. I think it's okay for her to be stubborn for once. She said her brother-in-law can afford to get them a house, right? Then why isn't he? They want to spend on nonsense. Not her fault. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her parents and sister? Please let us know. Well, they did tell her that she could stay there for as long as she needed to. But if it were me, I'd go ahead and let the sister and her family take the house. But only if I liked my sister. To my husband's female colleague, a saga of obsession. I don't know your Reddit name, but you finally gave me a reason to use my throwaway. I know you looked through this sub after you got advice here telling you to come clean to me about your affair with my husband. I personally couldn't find a thread that fit the description, but could be the wrong sub or that you deleted it. So if you read this and it sounds familiar, then yes, it's about you. I have no plans of speaking to you in the future, but I want to make a few things clear. Yes, I do remember when we first met at the Christmas party and you kept trying to get my husband alone to talk. You pouted so much when he refused, I thought you would quack. Do you remember how all of his colleagues were friendly with me? I remember when you approached my husband and I walking home from my birthday dinner. I'm pretty sure this was a coincidence, but seeing my husband practically jump away from you trying to hug him was the highlight of my night. I know my husband is attractive, of course I know. I married him and had kids with him, but I bet you didn't know because you have only been at the company for a few months and your coworkers used to be my coworkers. I know all about you trying to get him alone after meetings. Not only straight from my husband because you make him feel uncomfortable, but also from them. Did you think he wouldn't talk to me after you accidentally sent him 2 of those photos on separate occasions? Did you think you could really get him? Did you look at his Instagram and think, wow, I want that life. I just need to lie to his wife and it's all mine? Did you think knocking on my door when I'm hosting a dinner party to hand me printouts of your conversations with him that I would go off on the deep end and divorce him? I'm pretty sure HR have spoken to you already about your inappropriate behavior and misuse of his personal file. I'm sure that you're shocked. Maybe you didn't think my husband would report it. I don't know what repercussions you will get, and I don't care. If you come near me, my husband, or our kids, or our nice home again, the police will be called. A word of advice. If you're going to fabricate messages, you might want to get rid of the wrong number, or at least replace it with a name. Update. She has now been fired with immediate effect. I will update when we know our next steps. Update. A few people implied that there was no smoke without fire. Usually I would agree and have been on the other side making these comments myself on my actual account, but my husband is also on Reddit and saw the comments and he wanted me to add some prior events. My husband is high up within the company marketing department that works closely with the event team in their field. When they work together on a project, big or small, they have to have meetings. The bigger the project, the more meetings needed. My husband worked very closely with the colleague that went on maternity leave. The woman was highly recommended by a senior employee in the events team. So after she had training on the systems and brought up to speed by her department head and my husband for a big project, he was friendly towards her. He remained professional at all times, and the meetings they had were also never alone. The project was a success, and then another big project landed in their laps. It was at this time the woman started acting strange just before the Christmas period, asking for clarification after meetings when the points had been discussed thoroughly. When my husband rebuffed this and directed her to her own manager, it escalated to offering to discuss work matters over coffee, lunch, or dinner countless times a week, telling him that he looked good that day. This was done using her work email. She met me at the Christmas party and sulked when she couldn't get him alone, and a few days later sent my husband the first picture via social media. He didn't actually see the first picture until after she apologized in person. He accepted her apology before checking his messages when he was back at home with me. She had put a, "Oops, sorry, wrong person," message straight after it, so when he clicked that message, the first picture was there, which she could have deleted before he actually saw the message. A week later, a similar thing happens with a second picture on a different social media platform. He saw who the message was from and asked me to open it. It was a little worse than the one before, but when she apologized, she asked him if he told me about the pictures, as she didn't want me to get the wrong idea, as they were both obviously a drunken mistake. She was not a friend on any of his social media, so I don't know how she thought that was an excuse. My birthday comes along, and when she went to hug my husband, he jumped away as her actions were getting him worried. But after that, her actions calmed down a bit. She sort of stopped asking him out to discuss work so much. But then last Monday happened. Update. She was fired for harassment and misconduct, and this has led to someone else being suspended pending investigation. As my husband and I were both working from home due to the events that happened last week, I was unaware at the time of my post that she had been suspended pretty much straight after my husband reported this to HR on Wednesday. He handed over the text exchange, the messages on his social media with proof he never responded, and he printed out the work emails he had received also. The reason for the rapid response was due to the nature of the allegations, but I can confirm she was fired yesterday. I've not been told what she said, but she did not try to raise any allegations against my husband. In my comments, I explained a little about the HR system. The company uses an electronic personnel database which only HR employees can log into. No other employee should have access to this system, yet an employee in the IT department gave the woman unauthorized access to the HR system. A report was ran, and she had been in my husband's file 34 times. I don't know what she actually did in there, but apparently there were so many amendments that they had to restore his file from a recent backup. So the IT employee has been suspended pending an investigation, but I don't know much else about it as it's not my job to know. I'm only recounting what I've been told by my husband and former colleagues. The past 48 hours have been crazy, but I'm glad that this post reached other platforms as a relative of hers found the post and reached out to us to apologize for her actions. After a few messages were exchanged, we had a very long phone call. I will not go into specifics due to their privacy. However, I can say the following things with permission. The woman has been fixated on other men before, resulting in her having an order of protection against her and her needing treatment. The family believes this is due to an event that she witnessed when she was younger. She's normally very stable when she has medication. The only problem with that is when she is stable, she believes she's completely healthy and stops taking the medication, causing a relapse. The person that she had told about this was her niece, who was not aware of her aunt's condition. The niece was under the impression it was a joke, then became scared when we called Wednesday morning, so she hung up. She reported this to her family, and they found out later that day the woman had been suspended. The family found the post and my comments referencing the text exchange and got my husband's name from the woman after confirming the post was her. The woman is currently staying with her other relatives about 4 hours away from where we are. We will be contacted if she goes missing from their care, especially while the medication is working its way back into her system. We will not be pressing charges at present, but we have logged this with the police, especially after talking about it with our friend, and her family are aware of this. Our security is being updated within the next 2 weeks. The school and daycare are also aware of the people who can and can't drop off and pick up our kids. They have also been provided a photo of her and to contact my husband or I if they see her near this school or if she attempts to pick them up. Hopefully I won't need to provide a further update to this, and I'm going to have a bottle of wine, and hopefully my husband and I will have a very good night's sleep. Update. We're still in contact with her relative. She's doing better than she was, but the medication still needs time to work its way into her system. It took a little while and her whole family to convince her why her actions were inappropriate and she needed to take her medication. The family is still worried we will go the legal route, but we won't at this time. The niece has reached out to apologize for her. IT person has been let go. However, I do have a bit more information regarding that. She had asked for access to check her own file to check her reference. The IT person did it and forgot to take back the access. They had also given access to a few other employees. Access has now been revoked from everyone with unauthorized access. I don't know what the company will do with him yet, but I believe they're talking this out with their legal team. The senior employee that referred the woman in the first place has also reached out to apologize. They had no idea there was even an issue until HR spoke to them. We won't be pressing charges against her or the company, as we wish to just move on from this as well as we can. We would have if my husband's professional reputation had been tarnished by this, or if we seem to be in danger. But we're glad that nothing more has happened other than a few gray hairs on both of us. Update. I was hoping my last one would be the end of everything, but things got crazier than we would have expected. I've tried to write this time and time again, but each time I did, something crazier happened. So my husband and I agreed with her older brother, Wayne, fake name, he's the father of the niece, that ex-colleague, Sarah, fake name, went to stay with her aunt and uncle 4 hours away. So everything was going well until late March. My phone was in the house and I was doing some gardening in front while the weather was warm, and I look up and Sarah was in front of me. She was smiling and oh so glad that she caught me when I was home, because she kept showing up when none of our cars were in the driveway. Before I even managed to process her presence, she yells with excitement that she's pregnant and my husband is the father. I swear my eyebrows contorted in confusion so much I couldn't see for a moment. It was evident she had not been on her medication, not because she was a mess. She was dressed very well and looked well cared for, but she was still under the impression that my husband had this forbidden romance with her. She goes on to tell me that their baby is due in mid-June, and that as I have been a dutiful wife and stuck by my husband through his infidelity, then we have to get along if I am to be in their child's life, and she hopes that I don't hold a grudge about this. Which is all well and good if there was a chance what she said was accurate, but I will state again that there's no way he could be the father. He doesn't have the time for an affair. With 4 kids, work, our joint social life, and his hobbies that are in our house, and our joint hobbies, unless he's actively cheating on his commute to and from work, there's no chance. Also with her due date, she would have gotten pregnant before she even met my husband. I mean, he had a little something to do with the interview process by glancing over her resume, but they didn't actually meet until she started working. As soon as she left, I found my phone had numerous missed calls from Wayne and messages and voicemails begging to call him back, so I called back to get more information before I called my husband. Wayne confirms that his aunt slipped up when she was giving him an update on Sarah's condition, which led to her spilling everything that had happened. I was not witness to this conversation, so I do not know the full details, but I know there was an argument and it resulted in finding out the following. As soon as she got to their aunt and uncle's house, she admitted she was pregnant. They jointly decided that she wouldn't take the antipsychotics until she gave birth to her baby. She promised to stay away until after the baby was born, but was adamant my husband was the father, and then decided the day before she needed to let us know. She's a curvy lady, so I may not have seen a 4 to 5 month baby bump when she turned up at my house, but I was a bit preoccupied when she turned up. There goes my bragging about my observation skill set. According to Wayne, their aunt and uncle were of the impression that my husband was the father of the baby as the result of a one-night hookup, and that he was denying his cheating to me, and that she became obsessive after this event. But apparently, she could do no wrong in their eyes, so accepted all of this and took her at her word without confirming this with Wayne. So all of the updates we had from them were just lip service. Wayne was just as upset as we were. He knew his sister was spiraling in this delusion, and his family that were meant to support her were letting this happen. So I relayed all of this to my husband, who was understandably upset and concerned for our safety. We log this with the police and decide that we can go forward with a restraining order after paternity is proven, as at that moment, it's just he said, she said, because my husband could not prove that he had never done this. The next time Sarah showed up in early April, we see her approaching. We send our kids upstairs and casually walk outside to talk to her. I did not want to talk to her where there weren't any cameras. I don't want her near our kids, and I didn't want her knowing the layout of our home. She asks to go inside and rubs her rounding stomach. I firmly tell her no. My husband tells her he wants a paternity test, which she seems offended by because she never cheated on him. But to prove that the baby is his, she agrees to have one after the baby is born. As infuriating as this situation is, it's understandable as it's her body. I admit, if this was the first time I had met her witnessing this conversation, I would be seriously questioning my husband. She seemed so genuine, coherent, and confident even. That was the scary part, that she fully believed that my husband was her baby's father. I've seen mental illness before and have never witnessed anything like this. She just seemed so sincere, until she asked for money to support his unborn baby and get things, as even though she was staying with family out of town and as she no longer had a job with their affair getting out, she wanted to be on her own by the time the baby was born. We refused and told her if paternity was proven, then we would help. Late April, we get a call from my husband's parents, who despite knowing the whole situation, asked my husband if there was a chance the baby could be his, and after reaffirming the no, they explained that they were at home and got a knock on the door and it was Sarah. She wanted to introduce herself because once the baby was born, she wanted them involved in the baby's life. They already knew who she was and what had happened between us, so we gave them strict orders to not upset her because we do not know what she's capable of, just that she's pregnant and unmedicated. My husband was disappointed and worried, but understood they had to ask at least once. His no was enough for them. We do not know how she located their address. We think she may have followed us at one point, or maybe it was on his personal file she saw as his previous address. We checked with our kids that nobody they didn't know had approached them, and they said no. Even checked to make sure if they had been told to keep secrets. Confirmed no. Even our youngest. But they are never alone anyway. A week after this, she came to our house when we had people over for a barbecue. Our kids were at my in-laws, and we had an opportunity to try to relax with our friends. We spoke briefly about what happened recently, and then she was walking through my kitchen into the garden like she owned the place. She was cradling her round her stomach and started introducing herself. This was the first time our friends had a look at her, but she was not allowed to stay for long. My husband ushered her out quickly, followed by me. Everything about trying to keep her calm to not trigger a mental health breakdown evaporated then. There were words exchanged that she cannot come to our house. It was not possible for him to be the father of her unborn baby, as they had never even been together. They never had a relationship. He didn't owe her any money. My husband let loose on her all of his frustrations. We saw Sarah's face sort of break. No violence on our part, but for a second she looked confused and shocked, and then she left quite quickly. We got Wayne on the phone after Sarah left to tell him what happened. He was going to search for her and found her later on that night. I started the process of putting our home up for sale. I needed a place that was a fortress, and despite loving our home, knowing she just seemed to be turning up when she wanted, I didn't feel safe and secure there anymore. My husband and I discussed bringing the restraining order for it, but we didn't want to trigger any mental health breakdown. I got word that after the barbecue, a few of our friends were not 100% confident in my husband and started asking more questions, trying to poke holes in his story. I can understand why, and so does my husband. She's so adamant that he is the baby's father that something must have happened at least once, and that I was deluded for believing my husband. I don't blame them for gossiping. If it was happening to someone I was acquainted with, I would probably think the same thing. But we were lucky that it wasn't any of our close friends or family that were gossiping. She turned up when we were visiting my relatives. The camera caught her looking inside the house through the windows. She didn't seem too coherent at that time. She stood outside the house for a long time, and she was talking gibberish to herself and seemed paranoid. Seeing this made me accept an offer on our home and pick out a lovely new home in a gated community. We're in the process of moving now. Wayne reached out and advised that Sarah had the baby,
who looked a lot like her ex, asked if my husband still wanted to do the DNA test because it obviously wasn't his, which he agreed to because he wanted to put this behind us and to remove any possible doubt from me. I told him that I never doubted him because I didn't. I was scared of the situation, and behind closed doors, we had a lot of heated discussions because we were so stressed out, but never because I thought he could be the innocent baby's father. We also agreed so she could not ask for child support at a later time. The aunt and uncle had been corrected on their misunderstanding of the situation and also berated for the enabling behavior of Sarah. Some tough but necessary conversations were had with them, according to Wayne. Once they understood what had happened, they were mortified and wanted Wayne to pass on their apologies. He has taken paid time off and will be staying with them for a while. After Sarah had the baby, her brother, aunt, and uncle gave her the ultimatum that she takes her medication in front of them every day and to not try to contact us, or they put her into a mental health facility while her brother looks after the newborn until she's well enough to be released. She agreed to take her medication. DNA came back, and surprise, my husband is not the father. The look of relief and happiness on his face was priceless. I lied about who my baby daddy is. Do I tell him the truth now? I, 26 female, grew up in the Midwest but went to college in California. There, I met and dated Jeff, 26 male, for our final 2 years of undergraduate. After graduation, I stayed in California to get my master's degree while Jeff entered the workforce. We were happy together, and we planned to get married after I got my master's. After I finished my schooling, Jeff got cold feet about getting married and eventually becoming a father. Abandonment issues from his biological dad leaving, so he broke up with me. Heartbroken feels like it would barely scratch the surface on how I felt. I had a great job in California, so I stayed in hopes that Jeff would come to his senses and we'd get back together. We never did. He met Grace, 25 female, and started dating her about 5 months after we broke up. I started planning on moving back to my home state once I realized it was actually over. Then he and Grace broke up at the beginning of this year. Jeff and I ended up hooking up again a few times after they broke up. It was a very public breakup, no cheating involved. About a week after the last time we hooked up, he told me that he and Grace were getting back together. He said he couldn't remain friends with me because he still had feelings for me, and he had to let them fade to be fair to Grace. His final words to me were to not call him unless I was literally dying and just wanted to say goodbye. I left California behind 3 weeks later. 2 weeks after I had returned home, I found out that I was pregnant. It's Jeff's. I wasn't going to be that girl that uses pregnancy to get a man back, so I deleted all my social media accounts and made new ones that don't have my name attached to them. The only Cali people I added were trusted friends who I knew either had no connection to Jeff or who were loyal to me and wouldn't tell him my new accounts. Early in my pregnancy, I made the mistake of checking out Jeff and Grace's respective profiles and saw that they referred to each other as love of my life, and Jeff even had a picture of them captioned saying he was going to marry her. That broke me all over again, and I've since blocked them both and decided I had to move on with my life. I'm now 6.5 months pregnant. Since moving back, I have bought my own house in my home state, and I've been busy building a nursery for my baby. I already love this little baby in my belly, and I feel 100% confident that I can raise and provide for him on my own with minor help from my family. One of my best friends back in California was having an engagement party. I won't be able to attend the wedding as I'll be busy with a newborn when it happens, so I decided to fly out to see my friends and offer my congratulations to the couple before my life becomes baby-centric. I got into town on Thursday and honestly had a blast seeing all my friends yesterday, even though it's only been about 6 months since I last saw them. They were all respectful of my wishes to not take pictures of me where you could see I was pregnant. They did post some pictures of me online, but from the angle, it just looks like I gained some weight in my face. Nothing that would give away my pregnancy. It's a couple days before my flight back home, and the friend that I'm staying with suggested we go to the store because she wanted to get a scrapbook for our engaged friend. So we went to the store, and as we were getting ready to leave, I saw Jeff's cousin, Tanya, who's around 22, walk in. I'd talked to her several times at Jeff's family gatherings over the years, but we never really got along. She was always a bit too gossipy for me to like her. So, of course, she was the last person I wanted to see. The first thing she did was loudly announce that I was pregnant, as if everyone in the store couldn't tell just by looking at me. Then she starts grilling me, asking if Jeff knows. I said no, and that he doesn't need to know as it's not his. That was a lie, obviously, but I didn't want to open a can of worms. Tanya then tells me, with how big my belly is, that I'm too far along, and asked how could I move on so quickly. I told her that Jeff and I broke up a long time ago. She responded saying that everyone knows we were still hooking up at the beginning of this year. I did not know that was common knowledge. I figured Jeff would have kept his mouth shut about that. Anyway, I lied and told her that I already had a new boyfriend and that I was 5 months pregnant. She seemed to accept that and awkwardly congratulated me. My friend and I paid for her stuff and left immediately after that. I prayed that that would be the end of it. Like I said, Tanya is a gossip, so of course she went and ran her mouth about seeing me pregnant just a few hours later. Now a bunch of my friends have messaged me saying that Jeff is blowing up their inboxes trying to reach me. None of them have told him my new number or social media, so he has no way of reaching me himself. My flight back home isn't for another 2 days, and I'm freaking out. Some of my friends are saying that I should just tell him the truth now that he knows I'm pregnant. I still say I can get by pretending it's someone else's and that I'm not far enough along for it to be his. I honestly just want to ignore him and go back home. However, I'm having some doubts that that's the right choice as there isn't a consensus on what to do, so I'm turning to internet strangers. Unless you specifically don't want him in your life for your sake, you should tell him the truth. I need to move on, so please don't contact me unless you're on your deathbed. Also includes, or it turns out you're pregnant. OP. I don't want him in my life, but it's not like a safety issue or anything. He never mistreated me in any way. I've just moved very far away, and I don't plan on coming back, so why even start that discussion when there's no positive outcome is where my mind is at, I guess. Because one day your kid might decide they want to get to know their biological father, and then he will find out, and then he will realize that you decided to take away any chance for him to know the kid growing up. Your kid will also realize that you took away any chance for them to get to know their biological father while growing up. Yes, it's obviously a very difficult situation. He still deserves to know. You can emphasize to him that you're structuring your life based on the assumption that he won't be involved in the kid's life. Obviously, that conversation would be years away, but I never planned on hiding anything from my kid. I don't know exactly what I would say, but I'd be honest that his father didn't abandon him. I like that last sentence. That's a very good way to phrase it. Thank you for that. He doesn't sound like a dirtbag. That would be the only reason not to tell him. You both handled the breakup like adults. Maybe trust yourselves to do that again. The baby will not be hurt by more love. OP. I think he'd be a great father, but I just don't see how it would realistically work with co-parenting. I'm not renting, I bought a house. My life is back home and his life is here. Although even with that as a legitimate concern, maybe I'm just really wanting to avoid having to have the conversation with him. Update. So the consensus on my post was to tell Jeff about the baby being his. Even from just the first few comments, that seemed clear. We did end up meeting up. It wasn't particularly interesting or traumatic, but if anyone cares, here's what happened. He got a hold of the friend I was staying with on Instagram. I wanted to just talk to him on the phone, but he insisted we talk in person ASAP. In retrospect, I should have just waited until the next day, but I kind of just wanted to get it over with, and it seemed like he did too. To be honest, I thought he was going to tell me that he wanted nothing to do with the kid, because I didn't see any other reason why he wanted to talk in person right that second. Keep in mind, it was almost 10 at night at the time. So my friend and I went to his parents' house where he was waiting. His parents always treated me like family, so I guess I felt comfortable being there, even though we probably should have met at a neutral location. When we got there, Jeff's mom answered the door. She hugged me, and I could tell she wanted to touch my stomach, but she restrained herself and didn't even ask, thankfully. I always liked her. We made awkward small talk as she led me to the living room. It was clear that they had just had a party, as it was still messy with a bunch of drinking cups lying around and confetti on the floor. On the couch was Jeff and Grace holding each other's hands. I was surprised that I honestly felt nothing for him at first. His stepdad offered me a seat, but I chose to stand. I wasn't planning on being there long anyway. Jeff started off saying that I might be able to fool Tanya, but he knows there's no way I would have ever met a new guy and gotten pregnant that fast, so he asked why I didn't tell him. I told him the truth, that the last time we spoke, he told me not to contact him again unless I was literally dying, and I'm not. He told me that he was trying to be respectful to Grace, and that obviously this would have been an exception. Grace chimed in to tell me that I ruined her proposal. I found out later, third-hand info, but knowing Tanya, I believe it, that the party at his parents' house was for him to propose to Grace in front of all their friends and families. Tanya waited until after the proposal, and when people were giving speeches, she told Jeff she was so glad he got away from me and wasn't going to be stuck raising my baby. Then all heck broke loose at the party apparently. I had no idea that happened at the time, or I honestly would not have went to see him at all. But hearing that he proposed was when it hurt. He broke up with me because he was scared of marriage and kids, but he dated her not even half as long as we did, and she got a ring. I put on a brave face, or at least I think I did, and acted like it didn't bother me, but it absolutely did. His mom told Grace that it's not my fault, and now wasn't the time for that. Then Jeff told me that Obviously, I can't move now. I told him that I already did, and I was only in California for the weekend. He countered, saying that I have to move back. I told him no, I'm not doing that. He said, "Well, I can't just leave." At that point, I got frustrated and told him that I left months ago. My job is in my home state. I bought a house. All my doctor's appointments have been there. I established residency there a long time ago. California isn't my home anymore and hasn't been for half a year now. So then he got frustrated and got up to approach me, asking if he's just supposed to send a paycheck once a month and saying this wasn't how it was supposed to happen. I don't really know what he meant by that second part because he just found out I was pregnant a few hours before, but I assumed he was talking about his life plans. I forced myself to calm down and try to be empathetic. I told him that if he was worried about this messing up his plans for the future, that he had nothing to worry about. I don't want or need anything from him. I've planned everything out from finances to childcare when I return to work to even setting up my baby's college fund. It's all taken care of already. He didn't really say anything. I didn't know if he was thinking or just relieved that I had it all handled. I told him he can still get married to Grace and have his own family someday. I promised I wouldn't bother or blame him for anything. My baby will be loved and cared for. Jeff got teary-eyed and told me that I know how he feels about this. He was referring to when he broke up with me and said that he didn't want to be a dad because he didn't think he'd be a good one. He also has abandonment issues from his dad walking out on him, his siblings, and his mom when he was 6. I told Jeff that he's not him, his biological dad, that he's better than him and always will be. His mom started crying at this point too. I promised Jeff that I wouldn't let my baby think that Jeff was a deadbeat. I'd be honest that we just weren't meant to be together and we live thousands of miles apart. He told me that he can't just not be in his kid's life and that I don't understand what it could do to them. He asked if we could please figure something out together. I asked him what did he realistically expect would be a solution because I'm not moving back to California and I highly doubt he and Grace wanted to pack their bags and move that far away from their own families and friends. I said I'm not going to be sending my kid on a plane every few months either because that's too much. Jeff didn't say anything to that, so I told him maybe that could be an option once he's older and has more independence. But right now, it's not happening. Jeff's eyes lit up and he asked, "It's a boy?" I'd been careful to not reveal the gender up until then, but I messed up there. I nodded and he nervously asked if he could feel the baby. Before I could even respond, Grace let out this loud wail and stormed off to the kitchen. Jeff apologized to me and then went to go comfort her. His mom excused herself as well as she was still crying, so she left and her husband followed her. That left me and my friend awkwardly standing alone in the living room. All we hear is his mom sniffling in the hallway and Grace sobbing while talking to Jeff in the kitchen. It was so incredibly uncomfortable, and I know many will hate me for this, but I just felt overwhelmed by the whole thing. Maybe it makes me pathetic, but having to stand in the room where a party was just held to celebrate Jeff proposing to another woman hurt so darn bad. So I left. I told my friend, let's get the heck out of here, and we quietly walked out. We ended up staying in a hotel, and I was able to get an earlier flight home on Sunday. Now I'm back home and putting my focus back on the nursery. I told my friends that I had talked to Jeff and I apologized if he still tried to reach me through them. I advised them to block him if it's too much. I know this isn't the end of things. I'm planning on reaching out to him again eventually. Even if he broke my heart, I still care about him and I won't deny him a relationship with his kid if that's what he really wants. I have no idea how it's going to work and I'm only allowed to update once, so I apologize that I won't be able to tell anyone who cares how it all ends up turning out. Thank you for the advice. Even though everyone was downvoting me and the post itself, it was nice to get opinions without bias. My ex-wife demands I financially support her new family after she used me for years. I have 2 sons, ages 16 and 14, with my ex-wife. Our marriage reached a bitter end when I learned she had remained married to me for over 3 years so I would support her through returning to school so she could switch careers to an even better paying one, despite her old one paying as much as mine. For years, I tried so hard to save our marriage because I felt it fracture. She played along until she got what she wanted, and then she was honest that she had never wanted to save our marriage and had been over me for years. When we divorced, custody was set to 50-50 of our boys, so she was ordered to pay child support to me because she was making so much more after her change of career in education. She remarried a year after our divorce and had more kids. After the birth of her last kid 4 years ago, things got bad. Her husband was diagnosed with cancer. Then one of her kids got diagnosed with a long-term medical condition. Then lockdown impacted her job. Our boys would tell me how rough things were at their mom's and how they wanted to live more with me. So I went to the court and the judge moved her down to every other weekend and changed the child support order to reflect her decrease in custody. Recently, she had to move into a smaller house because of how badly they were struggling, and then she came to me for help after the courts refused to end the child support payments. She told me I needed to help her and that I should be helping to take care of my boy's family, and that's what she and her family are. I told her she used me for 3 years so that she could survive off of my money. She did not get to ask me for more, to support a family that's not my own. She called me a selfish jerk, told me her family is living off charity and they could be so much better off if I would help them. I asked her why I was supposed to care. She told me she wished she had cheated while we were together and that using me for money wasn't enough. Again, she told me about her family and how they would starve. I told her I didn't care if they did or not, that none of them are my problem and I only care about my kids. She called me a jerk. Her husband sent me a text that night saying I was a cruel jerk and he hoped the boys would hate me when they realize I want their whole family to suffer. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk, but make sure you have a high-level conversation with your boys so that they'll be prepared for your ex and her husband when they try to paint you as the root of all evil when they go over there. Not the jerk. Is she actually destitute? It doesn't sound like she is. She moved into a smaller house. That's still a house. It's not a shelter, not even an apartment. Are they on food stamps? I'm getting the sense she's having a hard time adjusting to a life on a more modest income, but not that she's totally broke. You also know she has a history of manipulating money out of you. I'd leave this up to the courts. If she was really broke, wouldn't the court lower her child support payments? Not the jerk. While the degree of anger you exhibit is concerning, I don't see you as the jerk. First, your ex and her new husband are threatening to destroy your relationship with your kids. That's enough to go back to the court and try to get full custody if you want to go down that route. As for the finances, she can go to court and ask the judge to reduce her child support payments. Wait, she tried that. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his ex? Please let us know. Not your monkeys, not your circus. Next. Am I the jerk for refusing to tell my husband the gender of our baby after he skipped going to the doctor's appointment with me? My husband and I are expecting. This is our first baby and we're excited. Thing is, he barely attends any doctor's appointments with me, and his excuses aren't even valid. He's willing to miss the doctor's appointments over soccer or a drink or board games with his friends. His response is always, "I'm not the one carrying the baby. Why do I have to go see the doctor with you?" Last week was my final straw. He was supposed to come with me for the baby's gender reveal appointment, but he chose to not come last minute because his friend invited him to fish and chips meal. I was pretty livid, but I didn't make a fuss about it. My mom went with me instead. He texted asking me to tell him the results, boy or girl, but I refused to tell him. He kept spam calling me, but I hung up each time. He came home fuming, demanding I tell him the results, but I refused and bluntly told him since he refused to attend the appointments, then he gets no results till after the baby is born, and said I was willing to die on this hill. He went off calling me spiteful and immature for doing this and punishing him. He said he's the father and has the right to know. He then called me dramatic since I wasn't alone and my mom was with me. I said he gets no results, period. He's been fuming about it and told his family, and they're now pressuring me to stop playing mind games with him and tell him, but I declined. Am I the jerk? Update. I just wanted to mention that my husband just attempted to contact my doctor to get the results. It didn't go well and we had another argument over it. He couldn't get it since his mom was the one who made the call. Not the jerk. Already a deadbeat dad before the baby is even born. I would drop a friend if I found out they prioritized fish and chips over their wife and baby's doctor's appointment. If he's telling you, "I'm not carrying the baby, why do I have to go to the doctor with you?" that's going to turn into, "I didn't push out that baby, why should I look after it?" real quick. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. My ex pulled this with our second baby, and I caved and told him, I shouldn't have. You need to seriously reconsider this relationship. He's showing you that he and his friends are more important than you and your baby. He sees going to appointments with you as punishment, not as a chance to make sure you and the baby are healthy. Don't be like me and stay until he leaves you for another woman. Everyone sucks here. This whole dynamic is so toxic. If he's not being a supportive partner, I recommend considering walking away and looking for alternative sources of support, like your family. Playing these kinds of games, especially where the child is the pawn, is bad for everyone and will undoubtedly affect your kid if this continues into his or her adolescence. If your relationship doesn't last, do you want him to co-parent with you? If so, it's instrumental to separate your relationship with him from his relationship to your kid. As a co-parent, he should have access to the same medical information about his kid as you. Short me $70,000 in violation of our written agreement? It'll cost you $1.8 million. Disclaimer: the names and some of the situations have been changed to protect the identities, but the dollars and general nature of this situation is completely true. Background: a year out of school in the early 90s, I procured a job as a business analyst for a large family-owned tech company. This business was located in the booming heart of technology at the time and was very profitable. As tech took over the next decade, the company thrived and remained family-owned, which was a rich family, and company became exceedingly wealthy with a valuation and net worth in the high 9, low 10 figures. The family that owned it was quite neurotic, very moody, and had a reputation as very ruthless, greedy when it came to financing, deal-making, employees, etc. I truly believe this is what held them back from ultimately becoming a household name as a company. As I progressed in the company, I gained more and more face time with the owners. I worked on some projects directly with ownership that really paid off and gained me even greater access to their inner circle. Now, like a lot of people at the time, and particularly those who worked in tech, I was heavily invested in tech stocks. I discussed some of my investments and gains with ownership as casual conversation, though investing had nothing to do with my role in the company. That is, until one day in late 1999 when the owner came to me and asked me if I would invest some of his personal money. He wanted me to take big risks to see if they would pay off using $1 million of his personal money. I was a bit hesitant, but still, being in my late 20s and wanting to prove myself, I said I would. I asked for a written agreement where they acknowledged this wasn't my role in the company, was a personal matter between the owners and me, and to document my compensation for this side arrangement, 20% of all profits. Around this same time, and by working in the industry, I started to notice the weakness associated with a lot of tech companies. They just weren't living up to their hype and stock price, and some seemed like they were starting to run out of money. I had no inside information, just a strong sense of which companies were struggling based on my work in the business. Based on this, I started using both my money and my owner's money to short tech companies just after the new year in 2000. For anyone unfamiliar with shorting, it means if the value of a stock decreases, the value of the investment increases. I had a few long positions, but my overall position was very short. Since the owner wanted a big risk and big reward, I used his money and obtained leverage or margin from the financial institution where I maintained both his and my trading accounts. The accounts were separate, but both under my name. Again, I documented this and gained consent. Well, both my account and his suffered some moderate losses in the first 2 months of 2000 before the bubble began to burst. Then both accounts, but his in particular, began to skyrocket. Ownership's pettiness. In June, the company began to suffer a downturn. We were still profitable, but since we provided tech services and products, we were not immune to weakness in the broader market. I had not informed the owner of my short strategy. He came to me one day and asked how his money was doing, saying he suspected it was way down like the general market. To his surprise, I informed him that while we still had some money tied up in options, puts, and shorts, but based on the positions I had closed, there was $1.35 million in cash sitting in the account that belonged to him. Again, I still had a bunch of open positions, which, if memory serves, were worth about $1 million on that date. But the positions I had closed had yielded $1.35 million in cash just sitting in his account, which was in my name. The owner, either through ignorance or lack of attention, said, "Great, $1.35 million. Fantastic work in this down market. Will you please wire it to me?" I responded that I would, but would be taking my 20% of the $350,000 profit, or $70,000, before wiring him the $280,000. I reminded him that I still had open positions that had yet to pay off or close, but I didn't state the amount. He, once again, appeared not to understand or comprehend the open position statement, but instead totally focused on and became incensed about my rightful claim for $70,000. He went on and on about how times were tough, I should be grateful for a job, particularly at my young age, and the entire $350,000 was necessary for him in the company. I knew this wasn't true based on my position within the company. Worse, this was my first time personally experiencing the greedy and corrupt nature that served as the basis for ownership's reputation. Now comes the revenge. Since, after 2 separate conversations, the owner didn't seem to grasp that the open positions would yield at least some income and thus additional profit, I decided not to mention it again. I sent him back the entire $1.35 million and continued to manage the open positions to the best of my ability. And here's the kicker. The owner never brought it up again. He seemed to think the $1.35 million payment was the entire value of the account and never understood or remembered that open positions still existed. He never asked for records, tax documents, or any time of audit or financials. Given the fact that he was dishonest with me, I didn't feel the need to disabuse him of that notion. Ultimately, after a bit more net gain, I covered all of the shorts and exercised all of the options, puts in this case, for an additional $1.8 million. I worked for the company for 3 more years and owner never asked about it during my tenure, after I gave notice or since. I know it's a bit crass and even shady, but given his dishonesty with me over the $70,000, I felt justified in keeping the additional $1.8 million. I paid taxes on the gain, long-term capital gain, and went on my way with a fantastic nest egg. Nobody has asked about it since, and I have only told the story to a few people, and even then, only after the statute of limitations passed. The final ironic cherry on top of this sundae is that during my remaining 3 years, I gained greater influence with ownership and position within the company because they considered me loyal for giving the $1.35 million back and not making too much of a stink about the $70,000 profit. Little did they know I got the better of them. The company eventually folded due to family disputes, but my understanding is that ownership walked away in a very good financial position. They likely could have been much better and greater company had they not practiced the same dishonesty that they showed me with their vendors, clients, and employees. Update: there have been no negative consequences from this. In fact, the remaining family members have reached out a time or two about some consulting work. They have no clue. Am I the jerk for having a tent full of toys and books in the living room when my nieces and nephews aren't allowed to use it? My husband and I have 4 kids, Allie, who's 17, Andrew, 15, Charlotte, 12, and Lucas, 9, and we've been fostering Emily, who's 6, for almost a year. Emily has special needs. She gets overwhelmed easily, and when she gets overwhelmed, she hides. Emily is also very small and a master at getting herself into tight spaces, under the couch, inside a kitchen cabinet, inside a dollhouse, etc. So when she hides, it can take forever to find her. She'll also lock the door of the room that she's hiding in, then hide to make it that much harder to get to her. We bought her a tent shortly after she moved in with us. We let her pick out everything in the tent, from the mat on the floor to the toys and books inside, and we got her to go to her tent whenever she gets overwhelmed or feels like she has to hide. Nobody is allowed in that tent without Emily's permission. We have the tent in a corner of the living room. It's one of the few places where she can't lock a door, and we can see her in the tent for most places in the house. My family hosted Christmas this year. Before everyone came over, we told Emily to put away whatever toys she didn't want anyone playing with. She put some of her toys in her tent and some in her room and insisted on locking the door. When everyone got here, Emily hid in her tent and started to play with her toys. We explained to the kids that the tent is Emily's special place and that they are not allowed to go inside or use any of the toys inside. The kids were upset, but we had a couple of toys for them. Plus, Lucas was willing to share his toys. My siblings approached me multiple times on Christmas and asked why I put something so tempting as a tent full of toys in front of their kids, then say that they're not allowed to use it. I explained that the tent prevents Emily from endangering herself and that it has to be there because it's one of the few places where we can see it from most places in the house. When we got Emily out of the tent, some kids tried to go inside, and I told them they're not allowed in there even when Emily isn't in the tent. I closed it up and put duct tape on the zipper to prevent the kids from opening it. Some siblings left right after we ate because of the tent, and some stayed but went off on me in private for taunting their kids with the tent. My parents agree with my siblings that it was rude and want to host future holidays so Emily won't have the tent. Was I the jerk for keeping the tent in plain sight when there were kids that would want to use it? Wow. First of all, your parents want to host the holidays so Emily won't have the tent? So they just want to take her safe space away like that? That's yikes. And no, not the jerk. These people need to teach their kids what boundaries are, and if that's too difficult, make them handle disappointment better. Because let's be honest here, There's going to be a lot of toys they're going to see and want to play with, but they won't be able to because they're not theirs. This is not something for you, OP, to deal with, but the parents of the other kids. It doesn't say in your post how the kids responded to this though. Was it even an issue for them after you explained and set the rules about the tent? Not the jerk. Thank you for being such a caring foster parent and giving Emily a safe space. It's not your fault that your parents and siblings don't understand. It's her space, not anyone else's, and I'm glad you held your ground for her until the end. You don't understand. I travel a lot. Yeah, but that still doesn't make you correct. A crazy lady called me on the phone tonight about her reservation for the next business day, but booked it for the current day. She wanted to check in at 2 a.m. and have it count for the next business day. So she expected to check in at 2 a.m. and stay in the room for over 24 hours and only pay for one night. It wasn't those guests that are confused by hotel time, day rollover, etc. Either she full-on expected me to break the rules for her, she had a reservation for the current day that she made through Central. A little after 12 a.m. she calls. Crazy lady. I need to check in early at 2 a.m. Me. I'm sorry? I need to check in early at 2 a.m. and check out the next day. My spidey senses are on high alert from her tone alone. I've dealt with a lot of people like this before. Me. I understand. Our check-in time is at 3 p.m. the day of the reservation. If you require an early check-in, I can certainly do that after I close out the day around 3 a.m. No, I need to check in at 2 a.m. for the next day, not tonight. Me. Okay, our check-in time is 3 p.m. after 3 a.m. I can check you in for the next business day with an early check-in fee in addition to the regular room rate for the night. Awkward pause. I travel a lot, and that has never been an issue. Me, thinking to myself, yeah right, liar. As posted on our website, our check-in time is 3 p.m. If you require an earlier check-in, I can provide that with an early check-in fee, in addition to the regular rate for the day. People like this can sniff blood a mile away and want you to get flustered so that they can use that against you. There's no way I'm checking her in at 2 a.m. for the next day because that's impossible, and even if it weren't, I wouldn't do that without an early check-in fee. I don't doubt she travels a lot and probably twisted some poor night audit's arm somewhere and got what she wanted, but I won't and can't grant her request. Crazy lady. Another long pause. I've stayed at your brand a lot, and they always have helped me out. So you're telling me you can't or don't know how? Me. Our check-in time is 3 p.m. You said that already. I need to check in at 2 a.m. for tomorrow. Okay, I can do this too, ma'am. You booked a room for tonight, I can check you in at 2 a.m. However, you will have to check out at 11 a.m., and if you want to extend your stay for an additional night, we can certainly process that for you here at the hotel before 11 a.m. And of course, you are always welcome to dial our central reservations, and they will gladly accommodate you as well. She hung up on me, and a few minutes later, a booking agent from Central called me for clarification, and I told him what I told her. They put me on pause several times as they relayed what I said earlier to her again. She was lying to them, claiming that someone she spoke to earlier at our front desk told her that she could check in early and avoid an early check-in fee. She then demanded my name, apparently, and I refused to give it to her because of her misrepresentation of our interaction. I then told them she can contact my management personally, but her demands are something I simply cannot provide. She insisted on getting my name, and I was done. I told them I won't give that info, and I've already explained to her several times our policy about early check-ins, and if she doesn't cancel her reservation before I run audit, I will charge her as a no-show. She never showed up and didn't cancel a reservation, so I charged her. I'm off today, so I left a bunch of notes in case Crazy shows up. Am I the jerk for refusing to take care of my grandkids on a trip my son paid for me? I have one son, 30 male, and 2 grandkids who are 4 and 5. I take care of them 2 to 3 times a week for 3 to 4 hours a day. I don't mind taking care of them, but it is exhausting. At the beginning of November, my son invited me to go with him, his wife, kids, and in-laws to travel from the 15th to the 22nd of December. I asked how much this trip was, and it wasn't cheap, so I said I didn't want it because it wasn't something I wanted to spend on at the moment. He offered to pay as a gift, and I decided to accept on the condition that I would not babysit my grandkids at any time, and this would be my vacation. He agreed. In a few spaced conversations, I asked why they didn't leave the kids with my ex-husband during this period, as it is a very romantic city. They said they wanted a family trip. By the way, my ex-husband loves his grandkids, and they spent almost 3 weeks at his house once. He didn't go on the trip for other reasons. On the trip, I wasn't very proactive in taking care of my grandkids. Honestly, apart from a few well-spaced moments, my son, his wife, their in-laws took care of the kids. I obviously spent time with them. This trip, we basically spent the morning and afternoon together. At night, we were free to do whatever we wanted. I took the opportunity to visit some restaurants and hopping alone. My son and his wife took turns with his in-laws at night with my grandkids because most places weren't family-friendly. The 6th day, I decided to stay at the hotel, drink some wine, and read a book. My son found out I was staying at the hotel and asked if I could look after them. I declined, saying I had other plans in my room. He started to complain that everyone was helping and taking turns except me, who didn't help with the whole trip he paid for. This really ticked him off. I reminded him that it was his choice to bring 2 kids to a completely non-family friendly city, and that I said before even accepting his gift that I would not take care of the kids because I just want to relax. We ended up arguing, and he said, among other things, that I could be a little more grateful for his gift and make this concession for 3 hours for them and the in-laws to have a free night, but that I'm deciding to be a jerk. I stuck to it, and in doubt he would respect this, I ducked into the pool area the whole night. He tried to show up in my room with the kids and just dropped them off. Things have been tense ever since, as he said I was a jerk the whole trip. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Imagine holding a trip over your mother's head, your main caregiver. The audacity. Not the jerk. You explain your boundaries before accepting the all-paid-for vacation. You set the expectation. He shouldn't have assumed you would change. I'm going to go with not the jerk. You provide a free service for your son regularly by helping out with the grandkids. He agreed this would be your vacation, and they chose to bring their kids when clearly the city is not a family-friendly city. He violated your previous agreement, and you held your boundary. Am I the jerk for taking a nepotism baby joke too personally? At our family New Year's Eve get-together, the topic of nepotism came up. I'm assuming it's something on the top of some people's minds because of the magazines recently. I, 27 male, had seen some buzz about it online, but I can't say I had given it much thought myself. The number of celebrities I care about is a small one, and there's a good chance I don't know anything about their family tree. Because of lack of interest, I didn't participate in the initial conversation. The topic was brought up by my brother-in-law's wife, and I listened for a while before turning to a conversation with my husband. After a few minutes, my brother-in-law's wife said something along the lines of, "I want to know OP's thoughts on this since he's a nepotism baby." It was said somewhat jokingly, but I was still confused, so I asked her to explain. She said that since I work for my dad and was basically handed a job when I graduated college, that I was technically a nepotism baby. I replied, saying it was a little ridiculous to group me in with actors and models making millions on their parents' name when my husband and I were just regular people working to support ourselves and each other. She said it was beyond just regular people working to support themselves when I made this much in a year. I thought the whole thing was wildly inappropriate to be discussing in front of all these people, and I told her so. She said it was just a joke and I was overreacting. The atmosphere was obviously a little tense following that, and she all but forced my brother-in-law out the door before the night was even over. There were mixed feelings after she left of people saying I took the joke too personally and people saying she went too far. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. She was out of line, however, she was correct. Your situation is definitely nepotism. It doesn't just apply to celebrities. While she was a jerk for bringing it up and pushing the conversation when it clearly made OP uncomfortable, it genuinely baffles me how OP justifies and excuses the nepotism in his own situation. He doesn't make millions, so therefore being handed his job by his father isn't nepotism? What? Everyone sucks here. Agreed. I've seen a lot of nepotism babies not understand or feel that they're included in this conversation. Anytime your family or family's relations help you get a job, it's nepotism. Money doesn't matter. Everyone sucks here. Your brother-in-law's wife made a tasteless comment, and she made herself the jerk by pushing the conversation even more when you were against the comment and took offense to it. The conversation became very inappropriate once you showed how uncomfortable you were. On the other hand, you're failing to see that you are a nepotism baby. Your family started a business, and you got to experience an easier time getting your first job out of college because of it. It's very possible that you did a lot of hard work to get yourself that job, and it's also possible that someone else just as qualified for the same job got passed over just because your family owns the company. You did nothing wrong by taking the job, and your family have not done anything wrong by giving you the job. But you should recognize that you were lucky to receive a privilege in life that most people don't get to have. Edit. I understand that people may not like the term, and yes, the term itself is usually used in a negative way. I believe that OP is in the wrong by not seeing how much nepotism does apply to them. They seem to generally think nepotism happens with the rich and famous only. I want to make OP aware that the small business and hardworking people can fall into nepotism as well. Your dad gave you a well-paying job. You're a nepotism baby with no sense of humor. You're the jerk for pretending that's not the case. Info. Why are nepotism babies so in denial of their privilege? Not the jerk. You Reddit loons never cease to amaze me. Someone can't work in the family business without you accusing their family of nepotism? Let me explain this for you unstable, unsuccessful leeches on society. Nepotism is an unfair advantage given to a relative. If you hire your son because he's the most qualified applicant and you trust him, that's not nepotism, that's called common sense. You guys love handouts from the government and you feel entitled to them. Yet, when someone hires a relative, you all flip out and claim nepotism. This is why none of you will ever have successful businesses of your own. You lack common sense, and you're always looking for a way to be the victim and for the world to be unfair against you. If someone has a great job working for their family's company, you as a decent person should just be happy for them, not jealous that they have a steady income while you live off Doritos and Mountain Dew. My heart goes out to the kids reading all this insanity and thinking that this is how pathetic most people are these days. Reddit is not an example of how stupid people are in the real world. I've met countless people over the years, and none of them were as pathetic as the people on this site. Edit. Since so many of you are jealous losers and claiming that I'm a nepotism baby myself, no. I'm a day trader that shorts failing companies to help them go under. I also buy medical debt and collect on it, which I've been doing for the past 12 years. My biggest problem in my life right now is deciding where to park my $3 million cash this year. Victims never win, so stop acting like one.
Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard.
Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.